The teacher stands at the board and with a serious look reminds the students that the exam will end in 10 minutes, and therefore asks them to carefully check their names, card numbers, and get ready to hand in the work, since there is very little time left. At one of the desks sits a guy who is experiencing extreme tension because he already understands that everything is almost over, and he has hardly answered any of the questions asked, which is why he feels impending panic and helplessness. Classmates sitting nearby are in a state of mild shock and despair, as they also did not have time to finish their assignments, and the time to hand in their work is quickly approaching. One of them, looking around, asks his friend where the cheat sheets went. The young man who was approached replied that Lingtian was responsible for delivering cheat sheets for the exam. At this moment, both boys look at Lingtian in bewilderment, who is sitting in front of them at the desk. Despite the seriousness of the exam, he is leaning on the desk and is fast asleep. Lingtian seems completely unconcerned about the consequences of failing his English exam, as he dozes off peacefully, not paying attention to the teacher or other students, and seems to be completely confident in his carefree life. Lingtian is the main character, a university student who leads a rather carefree existence, enjoying every day and not thinking much about the distant future. The guy is convinced that he is already happy and self-sufficient, if only because he can calmly eat and drink every day. Lingtian finds himself in the dining room and asks the cook for more rice, to which the woman, smiling, reminds him that this is the 5th bowl of free rice in a row, and asks if he would like to buy himself more nutritious and varied food. Lingtian categorically refuses and is not at all embarrassed, telling the cook that he simply has no money. But he is not at all ashamed of this fact and considers his situation to be quite normal. Meanwhile, his classmates standing nearby are whispering about the young man and expressing surprise that he cannot afford normal food, although he looks pretty good, and there is nothing particularly giving away that he is a loser. One of the guys wonders why Lingtian carries his things in a plastic bag instead of a handbag. Upon hearing this, Lingtian confidently states that those who think his choice is strange are simply uneducated and do not understand that this is the latest fashion trend. Lingtian used to be a poor young man, but from today onwards, everything is about to change. The teacher's voice is heard asking why he is sleeping again, since the boy has not answered a single question and is at risk of being expelled. Lingtian calmly remarks that he still has 10 whole minutes. A disdainful smile appears on the teacher's face, and she asks what he can manage to do in this short time. She begins to scold the students, reproaching the poor and stupid students who are not able to study well. She calls such people a burden on the school. Then she looks sternly at Lingtian and says that she advises such poor students who have no power, no influence, no brains to stop dreaming and flying in the clouds. The teacher's voice is heard. She asks the boy what he dreams about and whether, if he continues to stare out the window, the answers to the test will instantly appear in the sky. Lingtian confidently answers that this is exactly what will happen. Soon a satisfied smile appears on his face, and a loud sound is heard outside the windows. It turns out that a helicopter appeared near the school, to which a huge banner with the correct answers to the test was attached. The English teacher falls silent and looks out the window in surprise. The other students watch in amazement as the helicopter flutters and the banner with all the answers to the exam questions flutters. Lingtian immediately happily grabs his pen and advises his classmates not to hesitate, but to quickly copy while they have the opportunity. Instantly, the class erupts in joyful cheers as the young people thank Lingtian for the unexpected surprise, saying that he is the best, because no one expected to see the answers on a huge banner in front of the windows. Lingtian quickly fills out the exam form and places it on the teacher's desk, then turns to his classmates with a slight smile, calling them ladies and gentlemen and bidding them farewell, as if he were finishing an important performance. The teacher, unable to hide her irritation, raises her voice, demanding that the students immediately stop cheating, because such behavior undermines the authority of the educational system and violates the established rules. She loudly warns Lingtian that if the boy decides to cheat on the exam, he will receive 0 points and will be forced to retake it. A man in the helicopter, shouting over the noise of the blades, reminds Lingtian that they did the job strictly according to instructions and asks where the promised money is. Lingtian walks up to the open classroom window and calmly tells the man that he almost forgot about the reward, then holds out a large plastic bag filled with banknotes. A moment later, he takes a wide swing and throws the package towards the helicopter, showing that he is ready to pay generously for the success of their daring undertaking, as if such expenses were completely natural for him. The bag of money approaches the helicopter. Lingtian loudly says that there is enough money and no change is needed. The man on board, stunned by such generosity, greedily grabs the heavy bundles, while the remaining money is scattered in all directions by the gusts of wind. Some of the bills carried by the helicopter's blades fly back into the classroom, causing joyful cries from classmates who rush towards the money with delight, trying to snatch as much as possible. Ling Tian, leaving the auditorium with a satisfied look, reflects on how pleasant it is to see everything around him filled with money, and enjoys the triumph of his organizational skills. The teacher, speechless from what is happening, stands motionless and cannot believe her eyes. Ling Tian, casually bidding farewell to the teacher, announces that he needs to catch the school bus and that if he is late, there might not be any available seats. He glances briefly at the helicopter flying away into the distance and thinks about how difficult it was to coordinate all the details so that the answers would appear outside the window at the right moment. But all the efforts were completely worth it. The money system notifies Lingtian that the newbie's task has been successfully completed, and he has spent 150,000 yuan in cash during the exam, fulfilling the required conditions. The monetary system appeared a week ago. When the guy was in line at the bank, he was worried about the question of why the line was moving so slowly because too much time had passed. He continues to hold a plastic bag with 200 yuan in his hands and reflects on how hard it is to limit his spending, since this money was earned with great difficulty. Bitter tears appear on Ling Tian's face. Since these funds constitute his entire monthly salary, he feels offended that he exhausts himself with work for such a reward. The guy looks at his bag, which contains 200 yuan, and convinces himself that even a robber would not find such a sum attractive. Suddenly, his anxious thoughts are interrupted by the loud sound of a pistol shot. Armed men burst into the room. They order everyone to lie down on the floor and loudly declare that this is a robbery. Ling Tian was in extreme shock. The thought of robbers was just a fantasy, and he didn't want something like that to happen in reality. One of the robbers approaches the hostages, holding a gun at the ready, and orders them not to move, and also strictly forbids any sudden movements and resistance. The huge bandit who looks like the leader notices Ling Tian's unusual behavior and finds the guy's movements strange. The robber begins to look closely at the young man, noticing something suspicious in the way he moves. Ling Tian suddenly puts his hand behind his back and vigorously begins to scratch himself. He does not think about what impression such a gesture makes on the bandits. Suddenly, the young man feels a cold gun barrel pressing against his head. The robber loudly asks what the guy is doing there and what he is trying to do. Fearing a trick, the bandit suspects that Ling Tian has a gun on his back, so he aims straight at the back of his head and repeats his question. Ling Tian looks at the surprised leader and says that his back is just really itchy, while asking why he can't scratch it if he needs to. The robber is very surprised by the young man's actions and orders him to calm down immediately, threatening to blow his brains out, while the guy thinks that under no circumstances should he allow the villains to take possession of his 200 yuan. Their conversation is interrupted by a loud female scream coming from nearby. Everyone involuntarily turns around, trying to understand what is happening. A satisfied smile appeared on Ling Tian's face. He felt that he had received a great opportunity to try to sneak out of the dangerous place unnoticed. While the gang leader is distracted by the sudden noise, Ling Tian slowly tiptoes towards the front door, trying not to arouse suspicion or draw unnecessary attention to himself. One of the gang members begins to rudely pester the woman, who tries to fight him off and screams loudly, expressing her furious protest. The woman is extremely outraged by the behavior of the bandit who attacked her, and rudely demands that he immediately stop such harassment. The gang leader is very upset that his accomplice, instead of following the robbery plan, is once again crossing all boundaries and trying to harass girls. The bandit does not understand why the leader is scolding him, and calmly replies that he simply cannot resist the beauty of this woman, considering her irresistible. The girl reacts very emotionally to such words and declares that she would prefer to die than to deal with a vile bastard who is capable of humiliating and intimidating others. These events distract the bandits. Ling Tian, taking advantage of the moment, manages to get to the front door, hoping to leave the scene of the robbery unhindered. However, a moment later, the young man suddenly turns around and loudly demands that the bandit stop pestering the girl, declaring that he will not allow his class teacher to be offended. The leader immediately points his gun at Ling Tian and wonders how the guy managed to slip away so silently towards the exit, since he thought that all the hostages were still under gunfire. The guy offers to calmly discuss the situation, but at that very moment a loud shot is heard. Ling Tian sees a bullet flying straight at his head. Time instantly slows down. The young man desperately convinces himself that he should not die so ingloriously in this situation. The guy doesn't want to die. His whole being resists the very thought of imminent death. He can't come to terms with the fact that his fate has been decided. Ling Tian thinks that he must, at all costs, spend all of his 200 yuan before he dies. At this point, the money system tells the guy that a new task has been received. He needs to spend 1 million in 3 minutes to avoid death and gain access to the system. The guy instantly realizes that something out of the ordinary has happened. He looks at the leader of the bandits in bewilderment, trying to understand what is happening. The leader's gun is pressed against his head, and Ling Tian realizes that he has somehow inexplicably returned 3 minutes into the past. The guy glances at his watch and realizes that time has indeed rewinded exactly 3 minutes, meaning that in a matter of moments he will once again be in danger of death. Ling Tian comes to the conclusion that all responsibility now lies with him and decides to act decisively and boldly so as not to repeat the previous tragic ending. The leader of the bandits looks at the guy with distrust and says that he is behaving too suspiciously, as if he is hatching some kind of secret plan. The gun barrel is still pressing against Ling Tian's temple. The leader loudly warns that if the young man looks sideways again, he will get a bullet in the head. Ling Tian mentally calls the gang leader a scoundrel who already managed to shoot him once, and tries to find the right words to respond with dignity. However, only incoherent mutterings come out of his mouth, and the leader orders him to stop mumbling and express himself more clearly. Ling Tian sharply points his finger at the thug who was harassing the girl and claims that he allegedly dropped the money and he just wanted to warn her about it. The bandit is stunned by the information that has been voiced. He is deeply confused and does not understand what kind of money is being discussed. The gang leader points his gun at Ling Tian and orders him to move forward immediately, demanding to see where the notorious money the guy was talking about is. Ling Tian, passing by his class teacher, who was being pestered by an impudent bandit, barely noticeably winks at the girl and smiles. The class teacher is very surprised that Ling Tian is in the bank branch. The girl does not understand what he could be doing here. Ling Tian confidently tells the robber that it was in this very place that he dropped a very impressive sum of money, which he had originally prudently tied to his leg. The surprised bandit looks at his legs and notices thick wads of banknotes falling out from under his trousers, his face immediately distorted with deep confusion. The leader is in genuine shock. He is overcome with anger. He loudly asks his accomplice how he dared to commit such an act. The bandit, completely bewildered, replies that he has no idea where the money came from and assures that he has nothing to do with it. Ling Tian realizes that he has very little time left and needs to quickly come up with another way to spend the money, because even if the bandit completely stuffs his pants with bills, it will only be a few thousand yuan. The bandit furiously shouts to the leader that he himself does not know why he suddenly had this money, assuming that it is all a clever trick thought up by someone. Ling Tian loudly proclaims that he is just a good guy who is used to helping others. Ling Tian approaches the teacher and asks the attackers to pay close attention to the girl their accomplice was harassing. Ling Tian quietly whispers to the class teacher, begging her not to panic and to play along with him. The young man suddenly snaps his fingers, and at that very moment a huge wad of shiny banknotes materializes in his palm. Ling Tian tells the gang leader that the girl really had no choice, so she was forced to hide her accomplice's money. The leader, feeling furious, cannot understand why his people decided to carry out such a risky scam behind his back and insidiously appropriate part of the loot. One of the bandits, trembling with fear, tearfully justifies himself, assuring that he has absolutely nothing to do with it. The leader angrily shouts at his accomplices, accusing them of betrayal and reminding them that for the sake of a great cause, they were supposed to act together. The criminals express extreme indignation. They deny any accusations and say that this is the first time they have seen money appearing in such a mysterious way. The leader furiously waves his weapon in front of his subordinates and exclaims that banknotes won't come out of thin air. He demands an immediate explanation of this whole strange situation. Ling Tian intervenes in the conversation and tells the gang leader that he is doing wrong. The guy points to a large pile of money hidden behind a flower pot and says that the leader deliberately set the money aside for himself, acting in secret from the others. The criminals continue to quarrel bitterly, believing that the leader has no right to accuse them of treason, since he is also dishonest, and in their rage they call him by name, splashing out old grievances. The gang boss points a gun at his subordinate, calls him a complete idiot, and tells him that he's going to die now for telling his real name. The next moment, the criminals, in a fit of mad rage, pounce on each other and begin to frantically shoot their accomplices, not sparing the bullets and plunging everything around into chaos. The room is suddenly filled with thick clouds of gunpowder smoke and the deafening sound of flying bullets. Ling Tian at this moment covers the teacher with his body and presses her to himself, trying to protect her from the deadly fire. After a short period of time, the shots cease, the smoke begins to clear, and on the floor lie the bodies of the criminals who shot each other in a bloody feud. Ling Tian looks around in confusion and realizes that he has failed to complete the task of the monetary system. He has only spent part of the funds and still has 100,000 left. Suddenly, the young man feels the cold barrel of a pistol pressed against his temple. The gang leader, who was seriously wounded but miraculously survived the fierce shootout, points his gun at Ling Tian and angrily declares that he is to blame for everything that happened, which means he is destined to die. The guy involuntarily shudders with horror and thinks that this time he will not be able to avoid his fatal fate. The gang leader, with a wild look in his eyes, tells the young man to say goodbye to his life and decisively pulls the trigger. At this critical moment, the teacher suddenly rushes forward, covering Ling Tian with her body, and risking her own life, tries to shield the boy from the bullet flying at him. A sharp pistol shot is heard, and the girl notices how a deadly charge is rushing at great speed straight towards her, threatening to pierce her through and through. People watch the rapidly unfolding scene with horror and involuntarily open their mouths, unable to believe that someone dared to take a bullet for themselves. The bandit leader's eyes widen, and he watches the girl, still not understanding why his shot missed its target. The teacher, in confusion, turns her gaze to the bandit and wonders how she managed to avoid instant death. The girl still does not feel pain and realizes that something incredible is happening around her, since she is absolutely intact and does not see any bloody wounds or damage on herself. Bowing her head down, she suddenly notices with amazement that right in front of her lies a thick stack of banknotes, which somehow, inconceivably, became a reliable shield from the shot. The class teacher is very surprised because she absolutely cannot understand how this money could have ended up near her. The bullet fired by the gang leader hit right into this unusual protective barrier made of banknotes and did not cause the slightest harm to the class teacher. The gang leader is stunned by what happened. He does not understand the reasons for such a miracle, but is inclined to believe that Ling Tian is involved in everything. The robber, not wanting to put up with such paranormal events, again raises his gun towards the young man, intending to fire another shot. At this moment, a powerful explosion is heard, and the weapon in the hands of the bandit leader shatters into many small metal fragments. The leader clutches his head in horror as the gun fragments leave numerous painful cuts and wounds on his head. Ling Tian notices the robber's gun explode and believes that this development is the best proof of the justice of karma. The young man comes to the conclusion that his idea of quietly stuffing the bandit's pistol with money, which at first seemed very stupid, turned out to be extremely effective. The class teacher asks Ling Tian in a serious tone to remove her hands and not touch her anymore. Ling Tian sheepishly asks the teacher for forgiveness, explaining that he was stunned by what happened and simply didn't notice it. In fact, the guy only wanted to touch the protective shield of money that suddenly appeared in front of the teacher and protected her from mortal danger. However, the moment he touches it, the money disappears, and Ling Tian immediately realizes that the monetary system has not deceived him because he really cannot get hold of these bills. At this moment, the doors of the bank burst open with a bang, and an impressive group of police officers burst inside. The guards of law and order carefully examine the hall, surprised by the number of corpses of robbers lying on the floor, having shot each other in a brutal feud. The police inspector looks around the room with genuine surprise and asks everyone present what exactly happened here. Ling Tian calls the inspector Auntie and arrogantly declares that since she wears a police badge and is formally responsible for maintaining order, she should sort things out herself. The young man adds that he is late for work, so he slowly turns towards the door and begins to move without waiting for the inspector's permission. The police inspector notices 200 yuan sticking out of the back pocket of the guy's pants. She believes that he is somehow involved in the robbery and orders him to stop immediately. The girl reminds him of how he called her aunt and orders him to stay put. Such treatment irritates her extremely and seems inappropriate. The action moves to the next day. The class teacher, who is in the bank, is teaching her lesson. Ling Tian is doing his favorite activity in class, leaning on his desk and sleeping soundly, completely immersed in sleep. The boy was so deeply asleep that he didn't hear at all how his class teacher came up to him and loudly called his name, trying to wake him up. At this moment, one of his classmates loudly calls Ling Tian a loser, expressing dissatisfaction with the fact that the boy is sleeping in class again, which irritates him. Ling Tian gradually wakes up and slowly raises his head, still in a half-asleep state. He does not immediately understand what is happening around him. Finally, he slowly looks up and sees his class teacher standing next to him, loudly repeating his name, trying to get his attention. Ling Tian slowly returns to reality. The guy is not fully awake, and carefully watches the class teacher, thinking about her good physical shape. The girl strictly demands that he wake up immediately and concentrate on the lesson, She is extremely unhappy with his behavior. Ling Tian apologizes for his inattention and explains that he doesn't even remember falling asleep, mentioning that he was very tired yesterday because of his part-time job. Classmates are closely watching what is happening. They are sure that the class teacher will certainly severely punish the boy for such an attitude towards studying. However, the girl instead immerses herself in memories of how yesterday Ling Tian, risking his own life, saved her in a dangerous situation. The class teacher, to the surprise of his classmates, does not scold Ling Tian for sleeping in class, but only says that she forgives him, but only this time. Meanwhile, Ling Tian notices a small snag in the teacher's stockings and becomes completely focused on it, forgetting about the need to pay attention to the lesson. Classmates begin to whisper among themselves, wondering how Ling Tian's behavior went unpunished. One of his classmates notices that an urgent notification has arrived on his phone, which immediately attracts his attention. Opening his news feed, he is surprised to see a photo of Ling Tian and a report that it was this mysterious student who managed to outwit the robbers during the daring bank robbery yesterday. As soon as the bell rang for recess, Ling Tian instantly finds himself surrounded by a large number of attractive girls, all of whom are vying with each other to ask how he managed to deal with the criminals and save the hostages. The guy happily answers questions, enjoying the attention of beautiful girls and his new status as a hero, being in the center of everyone's attention. Their lively conversation is interrupted by a classmate who sarcastically suggests celebrating this event, clearly meaning having dinner together. At the same time, he sarcastically adds that Ling Tian, having become a star, is now obliged to treat everyone, hinting that he most likely does not have the money for this. His friend plays along, declaring that the dinner is absolutely necessary so that Ling Tian can properly cement his new status as a big star. The pretty girls are delighted with this proposal and enthusiastically begin asking Ling Tian to invite them all to dinner, excited about the possible celebration. But in the moment of general delight, they suddenly notice that the place where Ling Tian had just been sitting is completely empty. Ling Tian tries to leave the room as quietly as possible, filled with intense anger that his classmates dared to ask him to spend money. One of his classmates, who noticed Ling Tian's disappearance, mockingly states that he is just a poor man with no ambitions who simply ran away to avoid responsibility. After that, he asks the people around him if they really think Ling Tian is a star, but suddenly his speech is cut off. The young man stops mid-sentence, as he feels someone's hand suddenly fall on his shoulder, which causes him great surprise. He turns around sharply to see who has interrupted the conversation. In front of him stands a happy and smiling Ling Tian. The guy informs that dinner will be held in the canteen, and enthusiastically adds that it will be a great choice for everyone. Ling Tian, with his arms outstretched, once again reminds everyone present in a loud voice that he is inviting them all to dinner, which will be held in the school cafeteria. At this moment, a holographic screen of the monetary system appears in front of him. Ling Tian realizes that the new task has come just in time. A classmate named Zhanli is very surprised by this statement, as he finds it strange that they were not invited to an expensive restaurant, but to an ordinary school cafeteria, which is an unexpected turn of events for him. The friends start laughing loudly, clutching their stomachs. They find it very funny that Ling Tian can only invite everyone to the school cafeteria. Ling Tian, ignoring their laughter, says that this is exactly how it will be. He is treating them, and anyone who wants to can join in the dinner. The beautiful girls standing nearby immediately surround Ling Tian, discussing with interest that the canteen is not a bad place, as there are many dishes that they have not tried yet, although they think to themselves that the canteen is not very tasty, but they still think it is a good option to just eat. Zhanli is very offended by such a proposal. He wonders if he will really have to eat in the school cafeteria. Ling Tian provokes Zhanli. He tells the young man that he is simply afraid of being disgraced. Zhanli retreats to the side with his friends and they begin to quietly chat among themselves. One of his friends tries to help. He says that if the guy is afraid to go to the cafeteria, he can go instead of him. Zhanli reacts angrily to this suggestion. He loses his temper and insults his friend, after which he kicks him. Zhanli tells his friends to tell all the students that everyone should gather near the cafeteria today. Zhanli believes that he will emerge victorious in this confrontation. The guy wants to trample Ling Tian in front of everyone. A large number of people gather around the student canteen. They talk among themselves and do not believe that the poor student is going to treat the whole group, considering this something incredible and even strange. One of those present says that the guy is going to treat not only the entire group, but the entire educational institution, which causes everyone to be even more surprised and curious. The young man, hearing this, is surprised by the statement and thinks that Ling Tian has taken on too much, especially after the recent incident, which, in his opinion, made him believe in his own strength. The students hear a loud male voice ordering them to disperse. Looking around, they see the chef standing in front of them, which immediately attracts the attention of everyone gathered. A satisfied smile appears on Janli's face. He is surrounded by the best chefs of a five-star restaurant, which gives him a sense of confidence and advantage. A mobile kitchen pulls up to the entrance of the student canteen, and everyone hears Janli's voice, which announces that he is in a good mood today, so he will treat everyone to delicious dishes. His friends, seeing how everything is unfolding, begin to try to win over those gathered to their side, offering those who do not want to eat in the canteen to dine here, since the chef of a five-star restaurant has arrived here. Many students, intrigued by the offer, watch with curiosity as the chef prepares sumptuous dishes and begin to think that it will be much better than the regular food in the cafeteria. Janli's friend, seeing the growing excitement among the students, tells them that his friend is very kind and generous and treats them with all his heart, which causes even greater admiration among those present. The young man adds that his friend really is like that, unlike Lingtian, who only pretends to be generous, although in reality he is very poor and unable to pay for a decent dinner. Janli, looking at Lingtian, shows an upside-down finger, clearly hinting that the guy has lost in this confrontation and can no longer do anything to oppose his plans. The beautiful girls surrounding Lingtian begin to show interest in his opponent's proposal and ask the young man to allow them to have a meal at the mobile restaurant, believing that it would be a more interesting option. One of the girls says she is starving and suggests that her friends eat at the food truck first and then return to Lingtian to support him. Lingtian, trying to play along with his opponent, replies that in our time it is not worth spending so much money on excesses and that one can easily do without such expenses. Lingtian picks up the phone to answer the call, and the other person apologizes and explains that the food he ordered took a little longer to prepare than expected. The person on the other end of the line tells him that the dishes are quite complicated, so their delivery is a little delayed. But everything will be ready soon. Janli, watching Lingtian's actions with undisguised interest, wonders what excuse this loser will come up with this time to save his reputation. Suddenly, Janli and his friend's attention is drawn to a strange noise. They begin to look around, trying to understand what is happening and where this strange sound is coming from. At this moment, they all simultaneously raise their heads up and notice with amazement how numerous containers begin to descend from the sky on parachutes. Next to these containers, on her own parachute, a beautiful girl descends spectacularly, her thick hair fluttering in the wind. The girl is holding two clearly dissatisfied cooks in her arms, who, judging by their faces, were not at all delighted with such an unconventional way of transportation. A moment later, the containers land softly, and the girl and the cooks quickly line up around them, attracting everyone's attention with their impressive and confident demeanor. The sound of a container opening is heard, containing a huge amount of ingredients, enough to feed many people. One of Janli's friends suggests that this is all part of his friend's brilliant plan, praising him for his secrecy and marveling at how cleverly he organized everything. In contrast, Janli himself begins to realize the seriousness of what is happening, and instead of pride, he feels irritation, realizing that the situation is clearly getting out of his control. Janli's friend encourages everyone present to hurry up and get in line if they want to try the best food in the world, assuring them that it will be an unforgettable treat. Janli thinks that the ingredient containers and the girl with the cooks are the result of his younger brother's actions. The thought that it might be related to Lingtian does not even cross his mind. Confident, Janli loudly announces his name to the crowd and declares that he always strives to bring joy to people, adding that money has no meaning to him. He approaches the girl, who has spectacularly descended by parachute, with an arrogant look and extends his hand to her in greeting. However, the girl completely ignores the young man's gesture. She coldly pushes him aside and, paying no attention to him, walks past. Lingtian turns to the girl and the cooks. The guy accuses them of being slow and emphasizes that money does not matter to him. He adds that he is ready to double the payment if they start acting faster. The girl bows politely to Lingtian, apologizes for the delay, and says with a smile that she is the team manager, inviting the young man to simply call her sister. Lingtian likes this attitude. He calls the manager little sister and asks her to start cooking immediately. The manager smiles kindly and laughs quietly because she is clearly much older than Lingtian. The young man hands her an empty bottle and makes an unusual order: 2 bowls of rice and cool drinking water, which he asks to pour into this bottle. The students start whispering among themselves. Slightly shocked, they begin to realize that the entire team was not called by Janli at all, and wonder where Lingtian could have gotten the funds to arrange the plane and deliver the goods, as it is incredibly expensive. The students think that Janli has been defeated and start heading to the cafeteria to try the food prepared for them by Team Lingtian. Janli is furious and cannot accept the fact that Lingtian dared to oppose him and was able to surpass him in this confrontation. Janli loudly announces to everyone present that the expensive restaurant hired by his rival does not matter, because the main thing in cooking is the skill of the chefs. The young man proudly declares that his chefs are world-famous masters who have passed strict qualifications and proven their superiority. Janli says that among them there is one chef who cooks better than the best chefs of five-star restaurants in the country. Suddenly, the chef of the Janli team abruptly pushes the young man aside and confidently walks towards his opponent's team. This chef suddenly falls to his knees in front of one of the chefs on Team Lingtian, calls him master, and begins begging him to teach him his unique culinary techniques. The chef from the Lingtian team is surprised by such an act and reminds the interlocutor that he himself is a chef of the best five-star restaurant, but still asks him for something. Janli yells at his cook, demanding that he return to him immediately and threatens to fire him if he refuses to carry out the order. The cook replies that he doesn't care about being fired at all, since he is staying with the teacher to master his skill. A satisfied smile appears on Lingtian's face, and he loudly announces to the crowd that he is hungry and is going to try the dishes prepared by the experts. The cook bows respectfully to the young man and assures him that he will begin preparing the food. He asks him to wait a little. Janli watches the events closely, unable to believe that the events are unfolding as if it were a manga. Janli begins to shake his friend hard by the shoulders, demanding that he do something immediately to correct the current situation. Janli looks at his opponent with fury and hatred, wanting to see what these culinary savages are capable of. The manager appears in front of Lingtian, holding a huge dish in her hands, and respectfully calls him sir, informing him that the first salad is ready. Lingtian, without the slightest surprise, asks what kind of salad this is, and why the cooks didn't just bring him a bowl of rice, which he has long been accustomed to. The manager smiles discreetly and slowly lifts the lid of the dish, from which a bright glow immediately emanates. Filling the entire room, she asks Lingtian to try this masterpiece, offering to evaluate its taste. On a huge plate, in the very center, lies a tiny leaf of lettuce, immersed in a brightly shining golden sauce. Janli mockingly and arrogantly declares that this sight makes him laugh, because it is not a salad, but just a small torn-off cabbage leaf. One of the girls, unable to contain her emotions, presses herself against Lingtian, declaring that she experiences unearthly pleasure just from the smell of this unusual salad. Lingtian is very surprised by the girl's reaction, but he decides not to argue because the salad is really delicious, although it seems to him that the girl is clearly exaggerating. The manager, seeing the reaction of those gathered, asks the young people to take a closer look at what they call simple cabbage. She begins to explain that this cabbage-shaped salad is actually a culinary creation created from truffles using molecular technology. The dark part of the dish made from black truffles and the light part from the more expensive white ones. The leaves and stem of the cabbage are actually made from a paste made from the rarest snow clam. Lingtian, listening attentively to the manager's story, begins to eat the expensive salad without further ado. The manager says that one small piece of this dish, which looks like a simple cabbage leaf, is valued at more than 30,000 yuan. The students gathered around are amazed by what they heard and shocked by the idea that each bite could cost such a fabulous amount of money. Lingtian's voice is heard admitting that this salad really tastes better than the usual food from the school cafeteria. The manager goes on to say that their dishes look like regular food, but taste like they belong to completely different categories, and these tastes are completely incompatible with each other. The next dish she presents is made from the rarest white asparagus, which is harvested only in the most inaccessible places, and an endangered species of pork, seasoned with mangalitsa, with the addition of one of the rarest types of saffron. Afterwards, Lingtian tries fried eggs with tomatoes and rice, to which are added special tomatoes glazed with honey, and the rarest fish meat, which is valued at huge prices. The students watching the whole event are completely delighted by the rarity and sophistication of the dishes being served, and they begin to say that Lingtian has clearly surpassed his opponent in the culinary duel. Janli, watching what was happening, was very depressed. His face expressed despair. The guy lowered his head and quietly whispered under his breath that this was simply impossible and could not be true. The manager looks at Lingtian with a smile and asks him if he liked the dishes served for dinner. Lingtian burps lightly and loudly replies that the food is indeed not bad, but the water they gave him was too cold. In response, the manager explains that the bottle contains rare spring water, which was specially extracted from a high snowy mountain, and it has unique properties. After this, the girl hands Lingtian a credit card and says that she is obliged to return the remaining money in order to close all the accounts. Lingtian replies with displeasure that she shouldn't do that, and insistently demands that she keep the extra money for herself so that the manager can buy herself something nice, like a handbag or expensive cosmetics. The students watching this are very surprised by the young man's behavior, and one of the girls standing nearby begins to like Lingtian more and more, and she says with admiration that the guy is becoming more and more handsome to her. Tears appear on Lingtian's face. He realizes that he has completed the task, but he wishes his stomach was bigger so that it could hold more of this wonderful food. The money system informs the young man that the task has been completed, and in return he is awarded a lottery with a random organ upgrade. Lingtian hopes that he will get a useful upgrade, and not something useless like an appendix upgrade. The virtual lottery wheel, which only the guy can see, stops. Lingtian is excited to see what improvement will be provided to him. Looking at the girl standing next to him, Lingtian suddenly realizes that he is beginning to have X-ray vision, which allows him to see through clothes. The young man is incredibly pleased with this improvement and carefully watches the leisurely conversation of the beautiful girls who are next to him. One of the girls notices that he is staring at her and asks what is wrong. Lingtian throws his hands up in the air, thinking that he has no regrets at all about his life and the improvement he has received. Meanwhile, the police inspector finds the school where Lingtian is studying. The girl believes that she needs to find out the whole truth about the recent incident and figure out what really happened. Even though the robbery case was officially closed, the inspector senses that something is wrong and decides to meet Lingtian in person to try to figure out what is going on. A large group of students walks towards the police inspector, carrying bags of food in their hands, which raises additional questions for her. Coming closer to the young people, the inspector decides to stop them and ask what they are carrying, as well as what was the reason for their meeting. The young people, seeing a police inspector, ask her what happened and how they can help. The girl doesn't like the way the young men behave with her. She demands immediate answers to her questions. She is not used to such disrespect. The young people quickly apologize to the inspector because someone from their group called her aunt, which caused displeasure among the police inspector. The girl, looking at them with displeasure, decides to continue the interrogation and asks the students what kind of bags they are carrying in their hands. The young people answer that these are bags of food and say that the luxurious dinner they were invited to was organized by Lingtian. He treated everyone who wanted to eat. The students add that it was an unforgettable dinner where very expensive dishes were served, costing a huge amount of money. The police inspector thinks about Lingtian and makes a guess that perhaps the guy is the child of rich parents, and everything that is happening is some kind of joke. However, a moment later she realizes that this is absolutely not the case, and that Lingtian is definitely somehow connected to the robbery. The girl is sure that she must sort out this situation and bring the criminal to justice. Her intuition tells her that she is on the right track. The inspector thinks that luck is on her side today, as she doesn't have to look for Lingtian for long, and she is surprised to see a guy surrounded by beautiful girls approaching her. The girl is amazed at how quickly she managed to find Lingtian. She has a feeling that this is not an accident, and that everything that happens has deep hidden reasons. Suddenly, a holographic screen appears in front of Lingtian that only he can see. The money system tells him that the training is complete, after which it displays a selection of tasks on the screen. One of the girls asks Lingtian not to ignore her and says that she wants to taste the food from that wonderful dinner again. However, the young man does not hear her. As he is immersed in reading information on the holographic screen, the system reports that a punishment is assigned for failure to complete the task, and the higher the difficulty, the more severe the punishment will be. Another girl whispers to Lingtian that she will be completely alone in her dorm room tonight. The police inspector watches closely what is happening and cannot understand how a poor young man can be so popular with girls. This makes her even more suspicious. Lingtian continues to navigate the holographic screen that only he can see and reaches forward to confirm his choice. For the police inspector, the situation becomes extremely clear. She believes that the young man got rich precisely after the robbery, and her suspicions about his connection with the bandits only increase. The inspector catches up with the group of young people and orders Lingtian to stop immediately. However, the guy does not pay attention to what is happening around him, as he is busy choosing the next mission, deciding to choose an easy level. Suddenly, the police inspector grabs the guy by the shoulder, which causes an immediate reaction. He jerks sharply from the unexpected touch and accidentally presses the highest difficulty level on the holographic screen. The guy soon realizes that his hand did not stop on the screen, but passed through it. And as a result, he accidentally grabbed the inspector by the chest. Ling Tian realizes that he is in an extremely awkward situation, and in a panic, the guy turns around sharply and tries to escape. The inspector, furious at his actions, shouts loudly at the guy and demands that he stop immediately. The money system tells Ling Tian that a new mission has begun. He needs to buy a car worth more than 2 million yuan and take part in the race. The guy looks closely at his watch and understands that he has only 6 hours to complete the task. And if he doesn't make it, he will face severe punishment. Ling Tian, confident that he still has enough time to complete the task, thinks that no one can stop him from spending the money. However, he suddenly feels strange feelings and does not understand why he ended up in the air. It turns out that the police inspector caught up with him and, grabbing him by the arm, made a powerful throw, from which the guy flew into the air. Ling Tian proved to be too heavy for the inspector, she was unable to stay on her feet, and they both ended up falling to the ground. The young man's hands are loudly clasped in handcuffs. The inspector accuses him of hooliganism and assault on a police officer, after which he announces that the guy is under arrest in accordance with the law. Ling Tian realizes the seriousness of the situation. He is scared and cannot understand why the police inspector is making claims against him. The young people end up at the police station. The inspector offers the guy to tell the whole truth in order to resolve the case. Ling Tian again says that he has explained many times that what happened was a misunderstanding and that he had absolutely nothing to do with the robbery. The police inspector, with an evil smile on her face, points the bright light of the lamp at Ling Tian. She thinks that she can interrogate him all day and see how long the young man can last. Suddenly the phone rings, the inspector picks up the receiver, and a voice is heard insistently demanding the immediate release of the young man. At this point, the manager enters the office and announces that her client has been released on bail. And if the police have any questions, she asks that they be addressed exclusively to her. Ling Tian, taking advantage of the situation, quickly runs away from the police station, saying on the go that he has urgent business and that the girls would better figure out what is happening themselves. The guy runs towards a huge modern building made of glass and concrete. He stops at the closed doors and, clutching his head, loudly declares that it's all over because the car dealership is no longer open. Walking slowly down the street, Ling Tian wonders where he can now find the 2 million car he needs to complete the mission. Suddenly, a bus hisses loudly in front of him and the doors begin to slowly open. The driver rudely scolds the guy, indignantly demanding that he be more careful, since he almost ended up under the wheels of the bus. At this moment, an unexpected idea came to Ling Tian's mind, and with a smile on his face, he thanks the driver, causing him to be confused. The driver closes the doors, thinking that the young man is behaving extremely strangely, as if he is mentally ill. Ling Tian is set to upgrade the bus, turning its engine into a powerful hybrid capable of producing a huge amount of horsepower. The bus is equipped with an automatic air conditioning system that maintains a constant temperature and gets expensive leather seats for maximum comfort. Even the smallest details do not remain unchanged. A simple rear-view mirror turns into a modern information screen, capable of rotating 180 degrees. Ling Tian happily bangs on the bus body, confident that such a massive upgrade is worth the 2 million yuan cost. Proud of the work done, the guy believes that the money was well spent. Now he has his own bus and will no longer use public transport. However, the money system informs that this is only the first part of the task, and to complete the mission you need to win a drift race in the purchased vehicle. Ling Tian comes to the conclusion that he is faced with a serious problem, as he has to participate in a drift race on a bus, and he has absolutely no skills in driving a vehicle. His loud cries of despair attract the attention of a girl who slowly approaches him and declares that she is ready to help him cope with this problem. Ling Tian's eyes instantly light up with joyful radiance because he is incredibly happy to hear such a proposal. Seeing the manager nearby, he says with sincere joy that he is immensely glad to see her. The guy falls to his knees and, hugging the girl's legs, enthusiastically declares that he will definitely raise her salary in the near future. Soon, changing his happy expression to a serious one, Ling Tian gets up, gets on the bus, and orders the girl to hurry, reminding her that they have very little time left. As evening falls, illegal racers begin to gather outside the city, discussing modifications to their cars and proudly telling stories of their past victories. Janli loudly tells his rivals that they have no chance, contemptuously calling their cars clunkers, unworthy of even the gas from his exhaust pipe. The young people do not remain in debt and remind Janli that he recently offered everyone dinner, which everyone refused. This remark enrages Janli, who grabs one of his opponents by the lapels, demanding that he shut up immediately. At this point, a girl in a mask intervenes in the argument. She sternly demands that the squabble be stopped immediately and forces the guys to shut up. The young men immediately obey her command, calling her a goddess, because she is a legendary racer, famous for her victories in a pure white racing car called Snowstorm. The girl sternly asks the young men to stop talking nonsense and concentrate, after which she slowly gets into her snow-white racing car. She looks closely at the assembled participants and suggests that they not waste time and start the race. Janley recalls an old legend that the winner of the race will be able to remove the girl's mask and see her real face. The guy assures himself that he will be the one to do it today. Announcing that all participants have gathered, Janley gives the judges the command to begin the race. Suddenly, the darkness is cut by a bright light from halogen lamps, blinding all participants and causing them to feel bewildered and confused. Janley doesn't have time to look away. The bright light blinds him so much that he grabs his face and curses loudly. At this moment, Lingtian drives up to the participants in his modified bus, waving happily from the window and loudly greeting everyone present. The manager sitting next to her looks embarrassed and depressed, clearly not sharing Lingtian's enthusiasm. She feels extremely awkward, ashamed that they arrived at an illegal race on a bus. Janley begins to feel intense anger as he realizes that his old rival is once again standing in his way and intends to cause him trouble. Lingtian asks to stop the bus to take a closer look at a racing car named Snowstorm. He opens the window of his bus and intently studies the snow-white racing car, at the wheel of which is the mysterious queen of racing. The girl in the mask notices the young man's intense gaze, which causes her to feel noticeably tense and nervous. The fact that the mysterious girl hides her face behind a mask does not bother Lingtian at all, as he decides to use his unique X-ray vision skill to reveal her true identity and find out who she really is. What he sees next shocks him to the core. The racing queen turns out to be Xueqing, an excellent student at the university. Xueqing is known as the universal goddess among the students. This girl from an influential family, she has a beautiful appearance and graceful figure. Her refined style attracts everyone's attention. Xueqing has achieved outstanding academic success, and her dedication and hard work impress her teachers and classmates. In addition, she has excelled in sports, being a master in several disciplines at once, which causes admiration from everyone around her. Xueqing has a sweet and gentle smile that no university student can resist. Lingtian couldn't even imagine that this girl was leading a double life, taking part in the races, and was the queen of this dangerous and exciting event. Lingtian continues to stare at the girl in silence, unable to hide his surprise at learning her true identity. Xueqing gives the guy an angry look, then, without holding back her emotions, calls him an idiot and sharply asks why he is staring at her like that. Lingtian feels extremely awkward because of her reaction and abruptly turns away, closing the bus window so as not to meet her gaze. The judge standing at the start begins the countdown to the start of the race. As soon as he finishes the countdown, he waves the flag, giving the signal to the participants to start. The next moment, powerful racing cars take off and begin to gain incredible speed, leaving the parked bus behind. Janley's thoughts are all on Lingtian. He thinks he's a complete idiot for daring to come to the races by bus. The guy thinks his actions are absolutely ridiculous. Lingtian is not worried at all, remaining completely calm and relaxed. He puts his hands behind his head and leans back on the expensive leather seat of the bus. Lingtian notices that Xueqing's car, Snowstorm, continues to stand still, unlike the other race participants, which makes him curious and puzzled. The young man, smiling, calls the girl a beauty and asks why she doesn't start the race when everyone else has already started. Xueqing tells him that she has a special agreement with the judge. She gives a 5-minute head start to the other participants so that the race does not turn into a mockery of them. Lingtian tells the surprised girl that in that case, he will also stand and wait for her to start. Xueqing is shocked by the young man's behavior. Because the entry fee for the race is more than 500,000 yuan, she cannot understand why the guy remains so calm despite such high stakes. Lingtian thinks that 500,000 is nothing, because the most important thing for him is to remain patient and calm. Bitter tears appear on the guy's face, because he understands that the money provided by the system cannot be spent elsewhere. Lingtian thinks that he has spent 500,000 not in vain. Now he has to see which of the participants can give him worthy competition in this race. The girl calls him a complete idiot, believing that he will not be able to win with his bus, competing with racing cars that have undergone deep modernization and have great power. Lingtian remains calm and answers the girl in a mysterious tone that a great man always has a great plan. Xueqing, hearing the young man's name, suddenly remembers who he is and realizes that he is the same Lingtian who has been talked about so much at the university lately. 5 minutes pass. Zheching shifts the gearbox and presses the gas pedal to the floor. Her powerful racing car instantly takes off. Lingtian tells the manager that it is time to act and asks the girl to strictly follow the plan. The young man picks up the phone and confidently announces that now will be the decisive moment in their race. After which the guy calls the police and tells the dispatcher that a group of racers has gathered for an illegal race and is heading towards the mountains. Janli makes a sharp turn in his racing car, carefully watching the rearview mirror. He notices that there is no one visible behind him. Janli sends angry curses towards Lingtian and rejoices that his opponent has been left far behind. He continues to worry about last night's dinner and decides to take revenge on his rival, believing that he simply must win this race. Suddenly, Janli sharply turns the steering wheel and presses the brake pedal hard, noticing some obstacle ahead. The road in front of him is blocked by a dense net, on which sharp, sparkling metal spikes are attached. Suddenly, a group of police officers emerge from the nearby bushes, lighting the way with bright flashlights. The inspector approaches the young man, stating that he is arresting him for creating a threat to public order and illegally modifying a vehicle. The police tie up Janli. The guy looks around in confusion, wondering who could have set him up. The female officer does not know the citizen who called the police, but promises that if she ever meets this person, she will definitely thank him for his timely assistance in ensuring order and safety. Police officers and racers notice a slow-moving bus appearing on the night road. The manager asks Lingtian if their opponents have any other way they can get around this obstacle. The guy says there is a bypass road that will take the thieves a long time, and explains that he called the police to block the shortcut. The manager understands that the racers will now have to take the long way, and this gives them a chance to win, but she is worried about how they will get through the police cordon. Lingtian yawns lazily and reassures the girl, saying that she will understand everything when the time comes. A police inspector loudly scolds the young men, claiming that they are engaged in extremely dangerous illegal activities. Her speech is interrupted as a bus slowly approaches the police inspector, its powerful headlights brightly illuminating the area. To the girl's surprise, the bus does not brake and continues to move at high speed, hitting her and tearing her clothes. A collision with a bus results in a police inspector's skirt being torn, leaving her in an extremely awkward situation. Lingtian stops the bus next to the girl and looks out the window. The guy says he recognized her and calls her aunt again. The inspector is furious and suggests that Lingtian is also involved in illegal racing. Lingtian tells the girl that she is a little crazy and asks who in their right mind would participate in a bus race. He shows her an information card with the bus number and tells her that he is just going home, after which he asks her to clear the road. The inspector thinks about the young man's words and considers them to be true, since no normal person would participate in a bus race. The police remove the barrier and let the bus pass, which begins to slowly move away into the distance. However, after some time, the girl begins to have serious doubts about the veracity of the young man's words, because she remembers that there are no bus routes in this direction. The girl covers her torn skirt and loudly curses at the young man, declaring that he will answer for everything, including her torn clothes. The manager praises the guy for his resourcefulness and informs him that they are in the lead and half of the route has already been completed. However, her joy quickly fades when they are suddenly overtaken by a group of racing cars. Despite the other participants driving on a long road, their speed was much higher. They caught up with the bus and begin to lead the race. Yeching is very surprised by the fact that Lingtian was the leader in the race for a while. The girl makes an assumption that it was Lingtian who called the police. She thinks that it was a very smart decision. The girl thinks that the guy will not be able to beat her on the city highway. After this, Xueqing presses the gas pedal all the way down. The engine of her car starts to roar loudly, and the girl starts to pull away a considerable distance. The manager informs the young man that their rivals are quickly getting away and they are unlikely to win this race. She turns around and hears a young man talking on the phone, asking the other person to just do what he said earlier. Lingtian puts on sunglasses and tells his interlocutor that money is not a problem for him. He asks him to act immediately, and the stronger the better. At this time, the racing cars pick up tremendous speed and brake further and further away from the bus pursuing them. One of the riders has no idea who called the police. He is interested in a completely different question. A young man recently modified his racing car with a nitrous booster and is wondering if he can beat the snowstorm in the race. The guy activates the screen on the dashboard and presses the start button, which turns on the nitrogen acceleration mechanism. His car immediately makes a loud noise and jet flames start to burst out of the exhaust pipe. His car begins to gain colossal speed. He overtakes all the participants of the race, including the car of the girl named Snowstorm. Suddenly, a bright light flashes in the sky, illuminating the entire surrounding space. The young man continues to lead the race. He notices a bright light, but has no idea where it is coming from. A bright glowing ball becomes an obstacle to the further movement of the racers. They stop, sharply pressing the brakes. The racers do not understand the nature of such a paranormal phenomenon. They hear an unfamiliar voice that calls them Earthlings and says that it will take their bodies for study. The young people are shocked by what is happening. They think that they have witnessed aliens visiting Earth. The guy gets out of the car, but he can't see anything at all and is blinded by the bright light. He turns to an unfamiliar voice asking not to touch him. The racers get out of their cars, fall to their knees, and beg the aliens to have mercy on them and spare them. Suddenly, a bus slowly approaches the kneeling riders. The bus window opens and Lingtian looks out. The guy looks at the young people carefully, he smiles, and silently calls them complete idiots. The young people immediately realize that they have become victims of an evil prank. They look around and notice many bright spotlights located on the roofs of skyscrapers. Lingtian asks the girl to take action and immediately neutralize the opponents. The manager takes out a throwing tube and loads it with a small poisonous arrow. The next moment, a small poisonous arrow flies out of the tube and hits one of the racers in the neck. The arrows were laced with a powerful sleeping pill. And in just a moment, all the racers found themselves on the ground, immersed in a deep sleep. Lingtian bids farewell to the young people and asks them, when they wake up, to find the parable of the tortoise and the hare on the internet. The young man sincerely praises the manager and tells the girl that she is excellent at such tasks. The bus continues its journey to the finish line, leaving behind the sleeping race participants. Sheking maneuvers at high speed along winding mountain roads. The girl sees a bright light ahead and instantly puts on her sunglasses. She believes that Lingtian has enough aces up his sleeve. She presses a button on the control panel, and the next moment a huge spoiler appears on her racing car. With the nitrogen boost activated, she presses the gas pedal all the way down, causing the car's wheels to spin at a colossal speed. Shuiqing won't let anyone win this race, her car spewing bright jets of unburned fuel and accelerating with incredible force. The bus continues to move slowly towards the finish line. The young man asks how many kilometers are left to the finish line. The manager replies that there are about 3 kilometers left to the finish line. The guy is overcome by the thought that being the best is not easy. He wonders whether there are any worthy opponents who can compete with him. A moment later, he hears a loud noise and turns his head sharply. He sees Shuiqing's car, called Snowstorm, flying towards them. The young man is fascinated by this spectacle. He cannot take his eyes off it and even opens his mouth in surprise, not believing his eyes. The Shuiqing racing car makes a powerful jump in front of the bus and continues to move at great speed towards the finish line. The girl confidently runs her hand across her throat, showing with a gesture that the young man does not have the slightest chance of winning this competition. Lingtian believes that the girl is not called the goddess of racing for nothing, since she was able to catch up with him in such difficult circumstances, which only confirms her skill and experience. Shuiqing uses all the capabilities of her car. The nitrogen boost allows her to move away from the bus very quickly. The manager realizes that they are no match for the souped-up racing car and asks the young man what to do now, as the situation is becoming critical. Lingtian is deep in thought. The guy is very puzzled, since such a development of events was not in his plans. He thinks about whether he will lose this race. A moment later, the guy takes out a walkie-talkie and asks the manager if she can give it to the girl's car. A satisfied smile appears on the manager's face. She tells the guy that she can complete this task without any problems, and she is sure that everything will work out. While continuing to drive the bus, the manager rips part of her skirt and uses the fabric as a rope to wrap the radio. She leans out of the bus window and spins the radio vigorously in the air, intending to point it precisely at the girl's car. Having spun the radio well, the girl accurately throws it at the car moving in front of them, precisely aiming it at the passenger seat. Shuiqing, noticing a foreign object, immediately pays attention to it, realizing that it may be important. Lingtian's voice can be heard from the radio, calling the girl beautiful and asking if she is tired, then asking her to stop and take a rest, which irritates her. Shuiqing is very irritated. The girl does not like it at all that the guy plays such games with her. She calls him a loser who only deserves to lick her feet. Lingtian tells the girl that they will still have time to do this, but not before he wins the competition, after which he states that the girl will really enjoy this activity, which irritates her even more. Shuiqing becomes very angry and calls the young man a pervert, saying that he won't be able to defeat her today. Lingtian, in response, tells the girl that she thinks too highly of herself and asks why she is confident that she can defeat him. After this, the guy adds that everyone knows her by her nickname, the Racing Queen, and suddenly tells her real name, which greatly shocks the girl. Shuiqing asks the young man how he knew her real name, since she always wears a mask and does not allow anyone to reveal her identity. Ling Tian tells the surprised girl that he not only knows what she looks like under the mask, but also the color of her underwear, which leaves her even more shocked and surprised. He happily tells her that he knows much more than everyone around him and asks the girl to think about it. The guy adds that he knows how to keep secrets, but to do so he needs to show a little goodwill. Zheqing is very irritated by his words and then suddenly presses the brake pedal. The bus rushes forward and approaches the finish line. Ling Tian becomes the winner of the illegal race. The air is filled with loud cheers from fans and the sound of firecrackers, creating an atmosphere of celebration and festivity. Among the crowd of cheering fans stands an irritated Zheqing, the girl thinking that she will destroy the guy if he tells the truth to anyone. Ling Tian quietly leaves the event as the broadcast he has been waiting for so long is about to begin. The female streamer greets all of her viewers and announces that the broadcast is starting, after which she says that her dance will begin soon and reminds viewers not to forget to reward her for her efforts. Ling Tian feels a strong sense of satisfaction when watching the girl. He is delighted with her figure. The guy considers her the best streamer, whose broadcasts he never missed. A young man watches the dancing streamer girl carefully, wondering who she really is. Her face is hidden by a mask, and he wants to unravel her secret. The guy continues to enjoy the broadcast and notices how the girl's cat appears in the corner of the room, apparently interested in her movements. The cat decides to play a little. He pushes off from his place and jumps towards the girl, which leads to an unexpected incident. All viewers of the broadcast see how the cat jumps on the girl, and from surprise, she loses her balance and falls to the floor. This greatly upsets the viewers. The streamer girl starts receiving messages. Viewers condemn her for what happened and say that she will not receive any gifts, which makes her disappointed. Ling Tian is furious with the viewers' reactions, as many leave the broadcast and write nasty comments. The guy believes that no one has the right to treat his idol like that. The girl offers her deepest apologies to the viewers for the incident and watches as more and more people leave her broadcast. The streamer can't hide her disappointment, as the number of viewers has dropped from several thousand to several dozen people. Ling Tian is very worried about the girl, thinking that if he had money, he would definitely do everything possible to ensure that his air goddess was at the top and received due recognition. A moment later, the young man notices a strange phenomenon. The index finger of his right hand flashes with a bright glow. He stares at the glowing index finger as the money system tells him that he can make gifts in the broadcast program, giving him a chance to help the girl. The young man immediately takes advantage of this opportunity, and his streamer instantly receives the title of Queen of Broadcasts. The streamer girl is very surprised by the huge changes. The number of her viewers increases from several dozen to several hundred thousand, which stuns her. She does not understand the reason for what is happening. A satisfied smile appears on her face when she finds out that her subscriber named Ling Tian has given her the crown of Broadcast Queen, which immediately propels her to the top. Ling Tian begins to get very worried, as he just realized that he introduced himself not with a pseudonym, but with his real name, which could lead to undesirable consequences. He opens his news feed and sees that his real name is number 1 on the list of people who have made the most expensive donations, which surprises him greatly. The guy is stunned by the fact that the handsome man and multimillionaire with good taste is him. He begins to think that he has not yet looked at what reward he is due for winning the races. A virtual screen appears in front of him. The money system informs him that the reward for winning the race is a gift generator. He learns that thanks to his new skill called Golden Finger, he was able to reward the streamer. The number of uses of virtual currency is unlimited and can be used on any site, which opens up new opportunities for him. A new day begins. Ling Tian slowly wakes up. The guy is still in a sleepy state and yawns loudly. Suddenly, the young man notices something interesting that immediately attracts his attention and drives away sleep. He watches a girl who has a small cut on her leg, covered with a bandage, exactly in the same place where the streamer had it. This wound was left after the cat attack. Ling Tian finds it impossible that Zheqing is his favorite streamer, whom he considers his goddess. The girl notices the young man's intense gaze and smiles back at him. The young man tries to start a conversation, but thinks to himself that this is a waste of time since the girl is not his height, and besides, he does not find her attractive. A smile appears on Zheqing's face, knowing that the guy knows much more about her hidden life than other people. The young man does not want to continue the conversation and refers to the fact that he has urgent matters and suggests talking later. Zheqing is very surprised by the young man's reaction, and deep inside she begins to feel very irritated. Ling Tian is distracted from his conversation as his attention is drawn to a strong glow coming from the far corner of the classroom. The guy points towards the source of light and wonders who is causing this strong glow. Janli sits at the desk in a terribly bad mood, this bright glow emanating from his bald head. Janli is very irritated. The young man believes that all his troubles come from Lingtian. Suddenly, Janli has a revelation and realizes that the police who stopped the race were called by Lingtian. He immediately gets up from his desk and angrily accuses the young man of snitching to the police. Lingtian denies the guy's accusations and says that he is very wrong, after which he tells him that he was with Huiqing all last night. Xueqing is in an awkward situation, but she has no choice but to agree with Lingtian's words since the guy knows that she is the racing queen. The girl confirms the young man's words, but thinks to herself that she will definitely take revenge on the guy for everything. She struggles to contain her rage and anger and thinks to herself that she would love to kill Lingtian. The boy experiences great pleasure while sitting at his desk, and his classmates noisily discuss this information. They start gossiping and come to the conclusion that Lingtian, whom they previously thought was a loser and a pauper, is actually the master of his life. Xueqing hears the discussion of her classmates and intends to do everything possible to take revenge on Lingtian in the near future. The teacher enters the classroom, announces that the lesson is starting, and asks all students to take their seats. The teacher writes the lesson topic on the blackboard while Lingtian looks at the girl carefully. The guy feels something is wrong. He continues to look closely at the teacher. Vague assumptions appear in his head. He notices cat hair on the teacher's blouse, which further confirms his assumption. After that, his gaze is directed to the leg, on which there is a scratch, exactly in the place where the streamer was scratched by the cat yesterday. He watches as the girl stands on her tiptoes to reach the top of the board and compares her height to the streamer's. This version seems unlikely and surprising to him, but the guy continues to carefully observe the teacher and compare all the data. The teacher notices the young man's strange behavior. She stops explaining the lesson and looks closely at the guy. Lingtian can't believe that what's happening is real. It seems completely unbelievable to him that his streamer, whom he considers a goddess, and the teacher are the same person. His mind still refusing to accept this shocking version, the teacher loudly calls his name and asks what happened and why he is behaving so strangely. The guy doesn't take in her words. He's stunned that his incomprehensible stream goddess is now right in front of him. Lingtian still can't quite believe that his teacher turned out to be the very same sweet goddess of the ether that he admired so much. His thoughts are still confused. At this moment, the system suddenly informs the young man that he has been given a system task. The difficulty level of this task is called Hell Mode. The system specifies that he needs to collect 3 of the best streamers on the internet within 1 week. Lingtian does not understand what this task is and begins to wonder what the word collect could mean. In addition, he is completely unclear about what reward he will be given for successfully completing this task. Lingtian decides that he will figure it out as he goes along, since he needs to complete the task first anyway. The possibility that the teacher is a streamer is high. It is still better to confirm this fact using his X-ray eyes skill. The young man experiences severe stress from using the ability, but he convinces himself that he is doing it not for his own pleasure, but to solve an important problem. Concentrating, he carefully examines the teacher's body. The guy remembers that the streamer has a mole on her thigh, and if it is her, then the teacher should have this mole too. However, despite his efforts, the guy fails to see the mole since the girl has transparent leggings, and X-ray vision can only show through 1 layer of fabric. The teacher notices his intent gaze and asks him what's wrong with him and what's the matter. Lingtian tries to justify himself and find some explanation for his strange behavior, but he is completely unsuccessful. He begins to utter completely incomprehensible and stupid phrases. At this moment, the teacher's phone suddenly receives a call. She is distracted from the conversation, connecting with the interlocutor, which gives Lingtian the opportunity to relax a little. The girl says that she needs to answer an urgent call and asks the students to engage in self-study, adding that she will ask questions after the lesson. She quickly explains the situation, then picks up the phone and starts talking, and then a few minutes later suddenly leaves the class. Lingtian immediately senses that the teacher's conversation is clearly not pleasant because she looks very upset and soon begins to cry. The young man, watching this, tries to understand what happened. Memories of how his sweet goddess of the air also cried when she was insulted by the audience pop up in his head, and now the situation is repeating itself with the teacher. He decides that he cannot remain indifferent and suddenly stands up, firmly declaring that he will not allow anyone to make his goddess cry, no matter if it concerns his mission or money. Meanwhile, the teacher goes outside, approaches her pink moped, and hurries to put on her helmet. The girl starts the engine and quickly drives off, completely unaware of the young man watching her from around the corner. The guy tells his interlocutor on the phone that the teacher is already on her way and asks him to put psychological pressure on her again to achieve the desired result. Ling Tian, sensing that something important is going on, sneaks up on the stranger and listens carefully to his phone conversation, trying to find out more about what is going on. The teacher is in the doctor's office, where she anxiously tells him that she will soon find a way to get money, and asks him to help her father with an operation that is desperately needed. The doctor, after listening to her, replies that the situation is indeed serious, but despite all efforts, they cannot perform the operation without enough money. At this point, the teacher cannot hold back her emotions and begins to cry loudly, greatly worried that she does not have sufficient funds to help her father, and that her health insurance funds are almost completely exhausted. Suddenly, a message arrives on her phone, telling her that she will be paid 500,000 yuan for dinner with Mr. Dioy, but the sender demands that she not keep her boss waiting for long. The girl leaves the hospital and immediately notices two people standing near the entrance, who are clearly waiting for her. One of the strangers tells the teacher that she needs to make a decision and deal with the problem as quickly as possible, otherwise her father will die. His partner, noticing her indecision, tells the girl with slight sarcasm that she has a huge amount of patience, and when he signed a contract with her, he did not expect that she would be so stubborn. After which he touches her face with his hand and, in a quiet voice, adds that he is very sorry that she is so beautiful. The next moment, a fist hits the stranger in the face. The man receives a blow that throws him aside and he falls to the ground. The teacher, not understanding what is happening, looks around in surprise, trying to understand who turned out to be her protector. Ling Tian is extremely aggressive, making no secret of his anger, telling strangers that they are just a bunch of scum that he is not afraid of. The guy takes the girl by the hand and in a quiet voice asks her not to be afraid, assuring her that he will solve all her problems. Ling Tian orders the strangers to listen to him carefully, then declares that the teacher is his girlfriend. The girl, standing nearby, looks closely at the young man. Completely not understanding what is happening, she does not understand what the guy is up to, and she wants to know what goals he is pursuing. The stranger, without expressing any particular emotion, tells the young man that it doesn't matter whose the woman is, because she has a contract with their company, and it's her personal problem that she didn't read the document carefully. He goes on to say that the guy can't even imagine how huge a fine she will have to pay for breaking the contract. However, the stranger does not have time to finish his speech, as he receives a strong slap in the face from the young man. Ling Tian, not hiding his anger, orders the stranger to shut up and declares that his oratory skills do not inspire him at all, and he does not want to listen to his stupid speeches any longer. The man who was the first to be hit by Ling Tian slowly rises from the ground and, without hiding his anger, tells the boy in a quiet but threatening voice that he will greatly regret his actions. He spits out his knocked-out teeth and orders his partner to deal with the young man immediately. His partner's face twists into an angry grimace, and without saying a word, he slowly pulls out a huge knife from his belt. The strangers begin to slowly approach Ling Tian and tell him that no matter how strong his fists are, they are sure that they cannot be stronger than their knife. Ling Tian, without losing his cool, tells the strangers that they don't understand anything at all. The guy points his finger in their direction and demands that they turn around immediately. The armed bandits sense a threat and turn around sharply, trying to understand what is going on. To their surprise, the strangers do not see anyone behind them and cannot understand what the young man was threatening them with. They expected to see a threat, but found nothing. Ling Tian is extremely happy that the bandits fell for such a simple trick. He takes the teacher in his arms and tries to leave this dangerous place as quickly as possible. As Ling Tian runs to his bus, he hears angry voices from strangers behind him, outraged that the guy deceived them. They rush after the young man and burst into the bus. The men tell him that he is already dead. Ling Tian sits down on the soft, comfortable seat and continues to hold the teacher in his arms, a satisfied smile appearing on his face. He starts whistling a simple tune and tells the bandits that they have no idea whose bus they've hijacked. One of the criminals, upon hearing this, calls Ling Tian a complete idiot and declares that he won't fool them this time. At this moment, the doors of the bus suddenly swing open and the manager appears inside. The girl instantly rushes to attack the bandits and delivers a powerful kick to the head of one of them. The girl does not stop her attacks. She moves her attention to another bandit and swings her leg to strike. The man doesn't have time to react to the manager's swift attack and misses the blow. In a relatively short time, the manager manages to deal with the aggressive bandits. She throws their unconscious bodies out of the bus onto the street. Demonstratively shaking her hands, the manager tells the young man that for her, it was as easy as pie. Ling Tian opens the bus window and angrily tells the bandits on the street that this is his personal bus. The bus starts to move and slowly moves forward, leaving behind the unconscious bodies of the bandits who were unable to stop the young man. The teacher is very worried about the fact that she got into such a big mess. She is trying to collect her thoughts and does not know what to do next in such a dangerous situation. Ling Tian, interested in what is happening, wants to know in detail about the situation and asks the girl what exactly is happening. The guy tries to understand the reasons for her problems. The teacher is in no hurry to go into details and asks the young man if he can let her go. The guy notices that during the incident he was holding the girl tightly to himself, and realizing this, he immediately loosens his grip. The voice of a young man is heard, who happily announces that he has now let the girl go. The teacher, with slight surprise, clarifies that she meant something completely different, namely, that she wants to be let off the bus. In a sad voice, she tells the young man that she cannot afford to pay for the breach of contract, and therefore she is going to go to these people to apologize to them and try to settle the situation. Ling Tian asks the girl not to worry about it, and proudly says that now the teacher is his person and he will take care of all the problems. At this point, the money system tells the guy that he only has a week left to complete the task, and that he has collected one of the top 3 streamers on the internet, which is undoubtedly a success. The teacher shouts loudly at the young man and angrily asks him to stop talking nonsense, asking when she became his person. The guy cuddles up to the girl and tells her that she may not be his person right now, but she will be very soon, and he can't wait for that moment. The girl rudely pushes Ling Tian away and reminds him not to forget that she is still his teacher, and there can be nothing personal between them. The young man, realizing that the topic could cause even more discontent, suddenly changes the conversation and tells the teacher that they have reached her stop. The girl is very surprised by this turn of events. She understands that the young man took her to the residential area where she lives and dropped her off the bus. She realizes that she really likes Ling Tian, but she is very concerned about the idea that she is the teacher and the guy is her student, and such a relationship could be problematic. The bus arrives at a distant part of the city and stops at an abandoned industrial wasteland. Ling Tian pulls himself up and stretches his stiff back. He informs the manager that they have arrived at the location and are ready for the next stage. The girl, experiencing great anxiety, cannot resist and asks the young man if she needs to call more people for help. The guy replies that there is no need for this at all, and then asks the manager if everything is ready as he requested. The girl hands the young man a huge armored case, after which Ling Tian confidently steps off the bus. The guy approaches an old abandoned industrial hangar, near which there is a group of unfamiliar men. They are quietly talking to each other, not paying attention to him. With a confident step, Ling Tian enters the hangar. He hears how the men behind him begin to whisper quietly. They think that the guy is looking for trouble. Ling Tian, without slowing down, enters the far room. A stranger is sitting in a chair, his back turned to him. He is slowly smoking a cigar and carefully watching the sunset. With confidence in his voice, Ling Tian tells the man not to act too important. He is determined to quickly finish all the business here so that he can calmly watch the live broadcast later. The stranger's chair turns around, revealing a sullen man who begins to carefully examine the young man, clearly assessing him. In a rude and unfriendly voice, the man reminds Ling Tian that kidnapping an actress from his company is a serious crime and requires a difficult conversation. Ling Tian, remaining calm, acknowledges this fact and asks with a completely unperturbed expression what the problem is. The man loses his composure, raises his voice and demands that Ling Tian explain whether he is in an adequate state to allow himself to act like this. Ling Tian takes a deep breath and silently puts his hand into the inside pocket of his jacket, causing those around him to become wary. The men standing near the boss immediately tense up, deciding that the young man is going to take out a weapon. To their surprise, Ling Tian takes out an unusual key with a pig-shaped handle from his pocket, causing even more confusion. The men begin to discuss the guy's strange behavior among themselves, trying to understand what he was planning and why he needed this unusual object. Ling Tian demonstratively raises the key, showing it to everyone present, and begins to slowly open the massive case, attracting even more attention to himself. With a sharp movement, he throws the lid of the case aside and reaches inside for some object, causing a wave of tension among those present. The men around the boss watch warily, one of them loudly warning the boss that this time the guy will probably actually pull out a gun. At this moment, unexpectedly, one of the men receives a powerful blow to the head, from which he loses his balance and falls. The manager bursts into the room, lightning fast attacking the men inside and crushing them one by one. Ling Tian raises his voice and challenges his boss, declaring that he will now find out what he is really worth. The young man confidently raises the gun, pointing it at the frightened boss, and carefully aims, studying his face through the sight. Lingtian tells the man with determination that he made a fatal mistake by interfering in his girlfriend's life, and now he will have to find out what lead tastes like. The men standing nearby watch this action in horror but are unable to intervene, as the distance to the boss's table is too great to provide assistance. The boss, in a state of panic, begins to beg Lingtian, asking him not to make fatal mistakes and to try to calm down. However, Lingtian moves even closer to the table, pointing the gun straight at the boss, and pulls the trigger without hesitation. The man closes his eyes, screams loudly in fear, and covers his face with his hands, awaiting the inevitable end. A moment later, he carefully opens his eyes, surprised to realize that he is still alive. He has absolutely no idea what happened. A scattering of banknotes appears in his field of vision and flies around the room, making him think that he has died and ended up in heaven. Lingtian holds an unusual money gun in his hands, which shoots out bills at high speed, creating a chaotic money vortex. The boss looks at the young man in shock as a bright golden aura flares up around him, and he begins to believe that a god is standing in front of him. Lingtian shows a picture of the teacher on his phone and calmly informs him that the girl no longer belongs to the boss's company. The man slowly rises from the table, sighs nervously, and tells Lingtian that he does not agree with this, adding that he has a few questions. Lingtian nervously throws the empty money gun behind his back and defiantly asks the boss what other questions he might have. The man, with greed in his voice, tells Lingtian that this money is still not enough, clearly intending to provoke the young man. A powerful stream of banknotes bursts out of the pistols at incredible speed, falling straight into the boss's face. The guy decides to enhance the effect. He takes the third money gun in his mouth and shoots from 3 guns at the same time. The room gradually fills with money. The men inside watch this with genuine delight. Experiencing a feeling of absolute ecstasy, they unanimously call Lingtian a generous and ruthless man. Under the pressure of such generosity, the boss gives in and agrees to break the contract. Lingtian confidently takes the contract, heads for the exit, and, stopping for a moment, loudly reminds everyone that the teacher is now his girlfriend. The manager, barely holding back a sarcastic smile, notes that, of course, it is none of her business, but wonders whether it was worth spending so much money for the teacher. The guy replies that it was really worth it, after which he tells the manager that a little surprise awaits their new acquaintances. The boss of the organization is indignant and shouts loudly, he does not understand how something like this could happen. The men carefully examine the bills that fill the room and realize that these are not real money, but bills for pranks, which are counterfeit. One of the men turns to the boss and holds out his hand with money, saying that he has 3 real bills. Another man joins him and says that he also has 250 real yuan. The boss is indignant at these statements. He shouts in rage at how his subordinate dares to give him such a small thing, after which he sends him to the neighboring wall with a kick. Suddenly, the man calms down as a gun barrel is pressed against the back of his head, and a voice is heard asking him not to move and telling him that this time the gun is real. The boss, falling to the ground, bows low before the girl, calling her mistress, and apologizes, expressing his deepest regrets. He tries to justify himself, but the girl, not paying attention to his words, decisively pushes him away with a kick, demonstrating her contempt and dissatisfaction. Without waiting for further explanation, she points the gun at him, declaring that if he sincerely wishes to apologize, he must accept his death as a sign of atonement for his guilt. The teacher sits in her office looking in surprise at a small box that lies on her desk. She cannot understand how this shipment got to her, because she has not ordered anything recently. The girl opens the box and carefully examines its contents. She looks at the small scraps of paper that fill the space inside. After some time, she is overcome with great surprise when she realizes that the box contains her own contract, torn into small pieces. The girl makes the assumption that since the contract is broken, it means it is no longer valid. After that, she carefully examines the scraps of the contract and finds a letter among them. The teacher begins to read the letter and realizes that this is a new contract from Lingtian, who gave her the status of broadcast queen a few days ago. She continues to study the new contract carefully, unaware that she is being watched through binoculars. High up in the tree is the manager, holding binoculars in her hands and keeping a close eye on the teacher in the next building. Lingtian is at the bottom of a tree, a young man leaning on its trunk and asking the manager if the teacher has signed his new contract. The girl deftly jumps down from the tree and tells the guy that the teacher signed the contract, explaining that she could not refuse such a generous offer because her father needs money for an operation. Lingtian recalls that the previous wave of gifts attracted a lot of attention to the streamer, and now the popularity of her broadcast is steadily growing. which gives hope for further success. The guy thinks that there is no problem with the teacher, but he cannot offer gifts to all the streamers, since there are restrictions in the system. And with the help of money, he can only sign a contract with the two best streamers. Using his phone, the young man opens the app and thinks that he should first get the #1 streamer, which will be the most important step in his plans. Sao Bilo, the #1 streamer in the country, appears on the phone screen, attracting tens of millions of viewers during her broadcasts, making her the perfect candidate. Ling Tian heads to his bus, confident that it's time to negotiate with Sao Bilo. The guy intends to sign a contract with her for any amount. A satisfied smile appears on Sao Bilo's face. The girl happily announces that she agrees with all the conditions and is ready to immediately sign the contract without thinking about the terms. This decision greatly surprises the young man because he does not understand why the girl immediately agreed to his terms, without even spending a minute on bargaining. Sao Bilo hugs the young man, cheerfully calling him her little brother, and then tells him that she thinks he is a good man who would not lie to her, which surprises him even more. Ling Tian is genuinely happy and enthusiastically tells the streamer that she will have a great future, and her success is inevitable. Ling Tian's joy knows no bounds, because the guy couldn't even imagine that everything would go so easily. He is convinced that victory in the mission is just around the corner. Sao Bilo continues to smile at the young man, but to herself she thinks that the guy will soon be in her hands, since he met wolves in sheep's clothing, and does not realize who she is dealing with. The girl raises her glass of wine and offers the young man a toast to his organizational skills. She is sincerely confident in her superiority. Ling Tian raises his glass and drinks it down in one gulp, then thinks that today is a great excuse to get completely drunk. At this time, the streamer quietly nods to the elderly man who is always behind her, which means that she is giving the command to act. The manager notices that the elderly man, who was with the streamer the whole time, is trying to sneak onto their bus, which makes her wary. The man slowly enters the bus, looking around carefully, and then moves deeper into the cabin. Suddenly, a barely noticeable sound is heard. A poisonous needle flies. It hits an elderly man in the neck. The manager approaches the man and confidently says that she sees right through him. She says that if he wants to set up the young gentleman, then first he will have to go through her. To her surprise, the man still hasn't lost consciousness. He's holding his neck and starting to rub the injection site, poisoned by the poisonous needles, which surprises her greatly. The manager cannot hide her surprise, not understanding why the man did not lose consciousness, because the needle was soaked with a strong sleeping pill that should have worked instantly. The man understands perfectly well why the girl is surprised and turns sharply to her, informing her that his body is immune to organic poisons, which causes her even more surprise. With a sharp movement, the elderly man rips off his clothes and, looking at the manager, asks if she knows who she is dealing with. The man claims that he is a great master and will now demonstrate the ultimate secret martial arts. The manager clenches her fists and instantly launches a decisive attack on the master, delivering a series of lightning-fast blows to him, trying to catch him off guard. However, the old man is not only able to dodge the most powerful blows, but also blocks the attacks of the manager, grabbing her hand, which shocks the girl. With a sharp movement, he throws the girl aside and prepares for a counterattack, declaring that he will now use a technique called the square dance. The manager is trying to recover from a hard fall. She did not expect at all that the old man would turn out to be such a powerful master, who turned out to be much stronger than she expected. The girl gathers all her strength and throws herself into another attack, hoping that this time she will be able to win, but her blows do not reach their target. The master uses his secret technique and cleverly avoids her blows. After a while, the man starts a counterattack. The controller is unable to avoid all the tricky blows, one of which reaches her neck, causing her to lose consciousness. A minute later, the girl finds herself sitting in a chair unconscious. The master takes out his phone and takes a selfie with his losing opponent. He enjoys his victory. Meanwhile, Ling Tian and the #1 streamer continue their dinner at a fancy restaurant, enjoying expensive drinks and delicious dishes, and immersing themselves in the luxurious atmosphere. Ling Tian is noticeably getting drunk. The young man is immersed in thoughts that a contract with a famous streamer is definitely a success that will help him reach new heights. Sao Bilo lowers her hand under the table. On her leg is a small bag with an unknown powder, which she is going to use against Ling Tian. Very quickly, Ling Tian loses consciousness. His head falls onto the table and he begins to snore loudly, which clearly indicates the effect of the powder. The girl gets up from the table and approaches the young man, despite the fact that he is unconscious. She asks him if he really thought that she would sign a contract with him. The streamer drinks a glass of wine, grins, and says that as soon as the guy gets drunk and passes out, she will tear up the contract and throw him back on the bus, into which she will plant evidence. The girl laughs loudly and declares with satisfaction that the young man will sit in prison and drink only with his cellmates. Suddenly, she stops laughing. The girl's eyes widen in surprise when Ling Tian's voice is heard, calmly stating that he doesn't like to drink alcohol. The streamer is very surprised. She looks closely at the young man. The guy is sitting at the table conscious and looks completely sober. The girl is so surprised that she can't put words together into a sentence. Her eyes are wide open. She tries to ask the young man how he remained conscious, despite having taken a horse dose of sleeping pills. Ling Tian awkwardly talks about this. He replies that as soon as he walked through the door, he used his X-ray eyes to look around, including the girl. The guy tells her that he immediately noticed when she hid the powder and then started using it. Ling Tian thought that it was a really beautiful sight, and it seemed like he would have to get used to looking at beautiful girls with his new X-ray vision ability. Cao Bilo tells the young man that it means absolutely nothing, since sooner or later Ling Tian will end up in her hands. Ling Tian mysteriously tells the girl that she should worry about herself in the near future. The young man asks Cao Bilo a question, asking if she wants to know who ended up drinking her powder, his words causing the girl to instantly become uneasy. The streamer sits down on the chair with a thud, her face reflecting a mixture of surprise and fear. She looks closely at the glass from which she had just been drinking wine. The girl starts screaming loudly and insulting the young man. She says that the guy is a scoundrel and disgusting to her. Her voice is filled with rage and discontent. Gradually, the streamer's voice becomes quieter and quieter. Her body becomes heavy. The girl slowly closes her eyes, syllable by syllable telling the young man that he is a scoundrel. A wicked smile appears on Ling Tian's face as he reaches out to the girl who is slowly losing consciousness and tells her that there is one more thing he hasn't done. The young man licks his lips and begins to laugh softly. The streamer is still conscious, but her voice becomes weak. She tells the young man that he cannot do this, as his actions are illegal. Ling Tian is genuinely surprised and asks the girl what is illegal about his actions. Since many people do this, the guy does not understand why she is so outraged. After these words, to the girl's surprise, Ling Tian takes out plastic bags and begins to pack the food on the table, completely ignoring her reaction. The guy continues to pack expensive dishes into bags and tells the girl that his actions are completely legal, because many people do it. Cao Bilo looks at the guy carefully and does not hide his surprise. The girl was thinking about something completely different. She believed that his intentions would not be related to food. Ling Tian tells the streamer that she has no idea how to properly invite someone to dinner, before adding that he barely ate anything at all. The streamer tells the guy that she is a great beauty who is impossible to resist. She is confident in her attractiveness. But the young man at this time thinks only about food. Ling Tian doesn't understand what the girl is so upset about and tells her that she can't be more important than food, which only adds fuel to the fire. These words make the streamer furious. The girl starts screaming loudly and calling the young man names. Her anger knows no bounds. During his tantrum, Cao Bilo grabs the tablecloth and yanks it with force, causing the plate with the expensive treat to fall to the floor and break. Ling Tian is overcome with intense anger, his body literally shaking with irritation. The guy, barely holding back his anger, slowly approaches the girl. He grabs the streamer by the hand and starts pulling her towards him, which surprises the girl, who doesn't understand at all what the young man is up to. Ling Tian says that this kind of attitude towards food is unacceptable, and that he intends to punish the girl in the same way as small children, namely by spanking her. Cao Bilo screams loudly and calls the young man all sorts of names. She declares that his antics will not go without consequences, and she will not allow him to humiliate her in this way. The guy orders the girl to shut up immediately and then says he will show her how to waste food and allow herself to break other people's dishes. The girl says that even her own father did not beat her, to which Ling Tian replies to the streamer that, in that case, instead of her father, he himself will take care of her upbringing, and she will learn a lesson from him. Ling Tian is in a state of triumph, confidently walking slowly towards the exit of the expensive restaurant. Humming a cheerful tune under his breath and feeling victorious, he carries bags full of expensive food and elite drinks. Cao Bilo cries quietly. She says that the young man will not get away with his vile actions. The girl continues to be angry and feel humiliated. Near the exit, Ling Tian meets an older man who is clearly surprised to see him at the exit. The man lets the young man go ahead, after which he carefully examines him, warily watching his every movement. He approaches the streamer, calls her his mistress, and asks what happened. She confidently tells the old man that nothing bad can happen to her, and immediately asks if he managed to complete their common plan. The old man nods his head affirmatively and tells the girl that everything is ready and that Ling Tian will soon meet an unfortunate fate. Ling Tian gets on the bus and glances at the manager, suddenly noticing that she is an incredibly beautiful girl, although he had not noticed this before. Suddenly, his thoughts are interrupted by the loud sound of police sirens coming from near where the bus is parked. Ling Tian looks out the window in alarm and sees police cars approaching their bus at high speed with their lights flashing. Within moments, numerous police cars surround the bus from all sides, completely blocking its movement and preventing it from leaving. The officer confidently informs Ling Tian that he has been detained based on a citizen's report and is suspected of concealing stolen funds. These words cause great surprise in Ling Tian, who does not understand at all what stolen money is being discussed, and asks the officer a corresponding question. Suddenly, Ling Tian feels someone pulling his arm. Turning around, he sees the manager putting a gun in his hand. The young man looks at the weapon in his hand in bewilderment, completely unable to understand why the manager decided to give it to him. The officer believes that the moment for decisive action has come and announces in a loud voice to his colleagues that the suspect is armed. Ling Tian panics and tries to justify himself by saying that he has never held a real weapon in his life. The officer orders his subordinates to immediately open fire on the armed young man. A smug smile appears on the officer's face as he repeats the order, demanding that his subordinates eliminate the dangerous criminal without delay. The officer angrily demands that his subordinate explain why he disobeyed his order and did not open fire on the suspect. The female inspector confidently steps forward and stands between the officer and the young man, covering him with her body. The inspector asks the officer to take a closer look at the object in Ling Tian's hands, and with a slight grin says that it is just a water pistol. She pauses and then explains that this dangerous object is an ordinary children's toy. Ling Tian raises the water gun up and pulls the trigger, releasing a thin stream of water that immediately disappears into thin air. The officer begins shouting loudly at the inspector, claiming that the young man remains dangerous because, in his opinion, the boy intended to resist the police. The inspector, keeping his cool, states that harsh measures are unnecessary, since all the roads in the area are already blocked, and Ling Tian simply won't be able to escape even if he really wanted to. The officer reminds the inspector that she was the one who led the investigation that involved Ling Tian and demands to know why she sided with him. The girl firmly replies that she is guided not by personal interests, but by the principles of justice, and adds that their duty is to catch real criminals and not to punish the innocent. The inspector's words deeply touch Ling Tian. He suddenly starts to sob loudly. The young man rushes to the girl, hugs her, and thanks her for protecting him, calling her aunt. The inspector sternly demands that Ling Tian release her immediately. Reminding him that he is still under suspicion, she sharply adds that he should never call her aunt again. Suddenly, the officer lunges forward in fury and roughly grabs the inspector's arm, pushing it away with force, his face expressing irritation and clearly intending to carry out his plan. The female inspector is unable to keep her balance. She flies to the side and falls to the ground with a crash, experiencing noticeable pain from the impact. Ling Tian is overcome with rage and tells the police officer that such behavior is unacceptable even for a law enforcement officer. The officer laughs loudly, his voice mocking and threatening. He claims that Ling Tian is hoping for help in vain, since no one will come to his rescue in this situation. The guy keeps his cool and advises the officer to talk less, after which he turns towards the gateway and gives a mysterious order to get out. Suddenly, a small drone with a video camera appears from the shadows of a gateway. The device smoothly rises into the air and records what is happening. Upon seeing the drone, the officer screams in anger and begins waving his arms furiously, trying to catch it. And after a few seconds, he manages to grab the device. Filled with anger, he throws the drone to the ground with all his might, smashing it into tiny pieces. Ling Tian looks at the officer with a wide smile. He is completely confident in himself and knows that the officer is well aware of his patronage over the streamer and the teacher. The officer is clearly irritated. The man utters a threatening phrase. In order to spend money, you must first stay alive, and suddenly snatches a gun from his colleague. Ling Tian, remaining calm, mentally calls the officer a naive and stupid person who doesn't even suspect that everything that happens is being broadcast live. At this moment, the officer's wig suddenly flies off. He points a gun at Ling Tian and threatens to say that even with enormous resources, the young man cannot do whatever he wants. A woman approaches the officer and begins to touch his pistol with visible delight, admiringly saying that the weapon looks realistic. A huge crowd of onlookers quickly gathers around the policeman, taking out their phones and starting to film what is happening. discussing that they have caught an unusual live broadcast. The policeman immediately hides the gun. Onlookers surround him, admiring the realistic shape and commenting that it looks like part of the show. A satisfied smile appears on Ling Tian's face as he reflects on how money can really do a lot. Cao Bilo gradually comes to his senses, although he still feels weak and exhausted despite the effect of the sleeping pill wearing off. The girl turns to her old adjutant and asks if everything is ready and why Ling Tian looks so pleased. The old man says there is no reason to worry. He states that if he works as a team, there will be no problems. The girl reaches into her pocket to take out her mobile phone. She intends to call Ling Tian and warn him of the consequences of their conflict. However, suddenly her eyes widen as she realizes that her phone is gone and she begins to wonder where it could have gone. Cao Bilo takes an object out of his pocket, but instead of a phone, it turns out to be a small electronic game with a funny pig in the lead role. Her angry and loud scream echoes throughout the house. Streamer number 1 calls the young man a scoundrel who replaced her phone. Ling Tian tells the manager that his plan is strictly according to the previously developed scheme. He decided to use the streamer's phone for the live broadcast. The young man looks at the huge crowd of cheering fans and reflects that the strength of the people gathered is truly impressive. He takes out a piece of paper and a pen, thinking that he can now confidently sign a new contract with the streamer. Then the guy connects to the teacher's broadcast. The system tells him that the task is completed. In a week, he has collected 2 of the best streamers out of 3. To complete the task, Ling Tian only needs to connect 1 streamer. The guy is happy that everything is going so easily. Ling Tian loudly addresses the crowd of fans, asking them if they enjoyed the passionate, open-air live broadcast. The young man is confident that from now on, he will become the most famous and richest person in the world, and invites everyone to follow his broadcasts because tomorrow a big prize draw is planned. Suddenly, a loud pistol shot is heard, which instantly attracts the attention of the gathered people. Frightened onlookers begin to scream and run in panic in different directions. The officer tells Ling Tian that he does not intend to shoot him, but that he intends to search his bus right now. The young man is not at all afraid of this. On the contrary, he believes that an excellent opportunity for action is opening up before him. Ling Tian tells the police officer that there are many people watching the broadcast and asks him not to search the bus to avoid embarrassment. However, the officer completely ignores his words and states that he will conduct a search, adding that insulting the number 1 streamer will bring serious problems to Ling Tian. The policeman immediately notices the phones on the bus's dashboard, which are used to broadcast the information. He throws one of them aside in anger and orders his subordinates to immediately begin searching the bus. Ling Tian warns the officer that he is making a huge mistake, as his reputation could be seriously damaged due to the huge number of spectators watching this act. The officer believes that he is doing everything right and will bring the guy to justice. But he is very surprised by the young man's calmness, because his facial expression has not even changed. The policeman tries to put psychological pressure on the guy, telling him that it is too late and asking if he has anything to say in his defense. Ling Tian tells the officer in surprise that he has no facts and reminds him that he smashed the phone that was broadcasting, which only makes people want to know more about what is happening. The guy notes that all the people present here are part of his broadcast, and therefore the officer's actions will be widely publicized. The officer abruptly orders Ling Tian to shut up immediately, claiming that evidence will soon be found and he will catch him red-handed. To his delight, his subordinates report that a suspicious suitcase has been found on the bus, which looks exactly like the previously missing case. The police officer is satisfied with the actions of his subordinates and orders them to immediately open the found suitcase. A sly smile appears on his face as he begins to wonder if the young man will be able to avoid serious consequences after his people planted this suitcase. The police open the suitcase and a bright, blinding light bursts out of it, causing them to let out loud cries of surprise and bewilderment. Everyone present is amazed by what they see, and some even open their mouths in amazement, not understanding what is happening. The officer continues to smile. He is pleased with the situation and turns to the young man with the question of what he can now say in his defense. Ling Tian begins to theatrically express his emotions, stating that he regrets his desire to study so hard and that it was a mistake. The young man's statement greatly surprises the police officer. He cannot believe his ears and repeats the question, trying to find out what exactly the guy wanted to study. To the surprise of everyone present, inside the suitcase they had just opened were only high school math and English textbooks. The officer's subordinate brings a suitcase, opens it, and shows the contents of the case, which causes a storm of indignation in the man. Unable to contain his rage, the officer shouts and demands an explanation, asking what all this means and where the stolen money is. Lingtian, despite the attacks, continues to act theatrically as if nothing had happened, and innocently asks the officer what stolen money he is talking about. The man becomes increasingly angry, points to a bus parked nearby, and confidently states that all the stolen money is in this vehicle. Lingtian, in a quiet and confident voice, informs the officer that he is well aware of his insidious plan, which involves his subordinates planting evidence. The man immediately points the gun at the young man, warning him that such actions, which tarnish the reputation of the police, are a crime. Lingtian calmly moves the gun barrel to the side and warns the officer that if he doesn't put the gun away, he will definitely not get off with just prison. The police officer, moving the slide of his pistol, once again loudly asks the young man who can stop him in this situation. Lingtian, looking confidently into the officer's eyes, replies that until recently it really seemed like no one could stop corrupt officials like him. But now the person who can do it is right here. Lingtian's words cause an immediate reaction from the corrupt officer, who abruptly turns to the side and, noticing the man next to him, asks him in bewilderment what he is doing here. This man in an expensive business suit looks closely at the police officer, wondering if he will be able to stop the corrupt employees who are harming the state this time. This man, the director of the disciplinary bureau, he just received an internal report confirming numerous disciplinary violations on the part of this officer. The officer realizes that he has been exposed. He falls to his knees in front of the director and bows his head, realizing that he has been caught red-handed. The director says that the investigation will continue and all corrupt officials will be punished according to the law. He says that crime in their ranks will be eradicated. The Special Forces soldiers take the officer away and he, trying to justify himself, exclaims that there really was a suitcase with stolen money on the bus. The director of the disciplinary bureau looked at Lingtian and asked his interlocutor if this was the guy who asked her to come to the district attorney's office. The police inspector looks at Lingtian with a kind look and confirms that this is indeed the case. The director, after listening to the answer, notes that at first glance the situation looks wrong, but admits that her boyfriend has a heart of gold, and in addition, he knows how to stay calm and think clearly in difficult situations. The inspector angrily replies that Lingtian was never her boyfriend. Moreover, he is a suspect in the crime. The director, ignoring her words, says that it does not matter and states that he is going to return and continue the investigation. He asks her not to spread unnecessary information about this case, which clearly irritates the inspector. She watches the man leave and suddenly declares that her father does not understand anything about what is happening. At this time, Lingtian, fully aware of how the system works, decides to use the thrown money to increase the popularity of the #1 streamer's broadcasts and himself. The guy is sure that he will be able to benefit from this. The young man soon learns that he has taken 3rd place on the list of the best streamers in the country, which becomes an important achievement. The money system informs the young man that the task was successfully completed. Since it was not limited to just collecting girls, Lingtian begins to think about what reward he will receive for completing this mission. Lingtian expected that he would receive a useful skill for completing the quest, perhaps something like X-ray vision. But the money system surprises him by providing not the expected skill, but an opening of the main quest line and a small personal storage. The sun slowly moves towards its zenith, its bright rays illuminating a huge business center which contains many tall modern skyscrapers. On one of the upper floors of one of these buildings stands a young man who, watching with interest the city spreading out below, feels a sudden sense of danger come over him. At this point, the monetary system gives Lingtian a major task, in which he must create a company, expand his staff, and complete his first transaction. The young man soon learns that the mission's progress is 5%, and he already has his own company with 2 employees. The young man's mood noticeably improves. He confidently thinks that in a little while he will become the most famous and richest man in the world. At that moment, a large bottle of juice lands with a bang on the table next to him, distracting him from his thoughts. He notices that there is an upset man standing in front of him, asking him to sell him this juice. Lingtian looks at the customer in surprise, then realizes that he didn't notice him right away, and that the man had to stand at the cash register for some time, waiting for his attention. The young man apologizes to the visitor, explaining that he has been sleeping little lately and has become very absent-minded. Tears come to his eyes when he thinks that despite completing many tasks, he still has to work part-time to earn a living. At this moment, an employee of the store where Lingtian works slipped on the slippery floor and fell to the floor with a crash, attracting the attention of everyone present. The door to the general manager's office opens with a loud screech. A man appears in the doorway, having heard the girl fall and break glass bottles of drinks. The manager, beside himself with rage, begins to shout at the girl, saying that she always brings trouble, and states that if she needs a part-time job, she should be more efficient and attentive. Tears appear in the girl's eyes. She asks for forgiveness and promises that in the future she will be more careful and attentive in her work. The manager, approaching her, grins an evil smile, asking her what he should do with her now. He clearly enjoys her helplessness. The girl, with excitement in her voice, apologizes again and assures the manager that she will pay for the damaged goods. She begs and asks not to fire her. The head manager announces to the employee in a stern voice that half of her salary for this month will be deducted for spoiled food. He adds that the conversation is not over and will soon continue in his office. Ling Tian, standing nearby behind the cash register, listens attentively to the entire conversation, not missing a word. The manager, noticing the young man's intent gaze, sharply asks him why he is looking like that and threatens that for such a speed of work he can cut his salary in half. After this, the manager leaves for his office, loudly slamming the door. Ling Tian approaches the girl, who is still crying, and tries to calm her down. She apologizes to the guy for scolding him because of her. The young man strokes her head, assuring her that there is nothing wrong with it, because they are both poor students who should support each other in difficult times. The girl thanks Ling Tian for his kindness and support, saying that first she needs to go to the manager for a talk, and after work she invites the guy to have dinner together. She mentions that she has a discount coupon that allows her to pay half the cost of the dinner. The girl's name is Dodo. A few minutes later, she's already sitting in the manager's office, trying to stay calm. She asks the man what he wanted to talk to her about. Dodo asks the manager not to fire her. The man smirks and replies that her future in this position will depend solely on how well she fulfills his demands. Anxiety appears in the girl's eyes, and she begins to fear that the manager is trying to take advantage of his position to harass her. At this time, Ling Tian, standing nearby, carefully watches what is happening. He loudly snaps his fingers. At the same moment, a massive cash register appears above the head of the general manager. The manager senses that something has changed around him, but he is completely unaware of the heavy apparatus hovering directly above him. A moment later, the cash register starts moving and falls on the manager's head with a deafening crash. The man, losing his composure, begins to curse with cries of rage, declaring that he will immediately fire all the incompetent, talentless, and scoundrels. At this moment, Ling Tian appears at the door of the office, calmly informs the manager that he is not at all against being fired, and gives him a defiant look. The manager, with anger in his voice, announces to the young man that he is fired and orders him to leave the store immediately. The guy calmly tells the man that he is completely out of control of the situation and has completely misunderstood what is happening. Ling Tian adds that he does not mind the general manager being fired, since the store now belongs to him. The manager is extremely surprised by this information and asks the guy if he wants to say that the store was bought out by him. Ling Tian assures the man that if he doesn't believe him, he can pick up the phone and call the company's management. The general manager immediately dials the shareholders' number and begins to chat with them kindly, trying to make a good impression. Ling Tian, meanwhile, waves his hand at Dodo to calm her down and assures the girl that the whole situation is completely under control. After the call, the manager hangs up and Ling Tian calmly asks if he has anything else to add. The general manager frowned at Ling Tian and remained completely silent, but soon broke down. He angrily throws the heavy mechanical watch that was standing on his desk towards the young man. The manager shouts loudly, stating that he had just spoken to shareholders and the store was not officially up for sale. Ling Tian starts laughing loudly and calmly explains that he never asked the manager to call the shareholders. The man angrily asks Ling Tian to stop making faces and asks who else he should call in such a situation if not the shareholders. Ling Tian calmly hands the man a folded piece of paper with a phone number on it and asks him to call the number provided. The manager reluctantly agrees, warning that if he is not satisfied with the answer, he will immediately send Ling Tian to the police. The chief manager dials the specified number and tells the interlocutor his name. At this moment, Ling Tian's phone starts ringing. The young man answers the call, and the voice of the general manager sounds on the phone. Ling Tian gives his name with a slight smile and politely asks the man how he can help him. The manager, overcome with a mixture of shock and rage, realizes that the caller is Ling Tian, who is right in front of him, and begins to suspect that the young man may not be in a sound state. His patience runs out. He grabs a chair in a rage, raising it above his head to strike. He loudly declares that he is tired of Ling Tian's antics and is going to finish him off right now. However, the next moment the manager freezes in bewilderment, the chair in his hands suddenly disappears, and half of the hair on his head suddenly disappears. Ling Tian confidently tells the general manager that he really didn't buy the store. which makes the man even more confused. The next moment, there is a deafening roar. A huge excavator breaks the wall and destroys part of the building. The young man, with a satisfied smile, announces that he has purchased the land on which the store stands. After this, Ling Tian deftly jumps into the excavator bucket, which begins to rise slowly. From above, he announces to the manager that the store's site will soon be the site of his company's office. The general manager is overcome with rage. He silently watches as Ling Tian rises higher and higher. Once at the top, the guy settles down in a sun lounger under a large umbrella that protects him from the scorching sun and takes a large bottle of soda water in his hand. Then, he calmly gives the builders the order to begin demolishing the building. The excavator immediately gets to work. Tears of despair and helplessness appear on the face of the general manager. He watches the destruction of his former workplace. Ling Tian smiles and turns to the shocked Dodo and asks her opinion on what is happening. The young man tells the girl that he has long known that she is studying at the Faculty of Architecture. Dodo is so surprised by what she heard that she cannot immediately answer, and only nods silently, confirming his words. Ling Tian invites her to join his new company and take the position of chief architect to participate in the creation of ambitious projects, at which point the money system notifies the young man that the task completion has reached 11%. The teacher is in her office and thinks that Ling Tian was the very person who ordered her broadcast and sent her many gifts. The young man calmly replies that there is nothing surprising about this, adding that he did not even think of hiding this information. The guy assures her that he is indeed the owner of the company. The teacher looks at Ling Tian with distrust and accuses him of lying, stating that the real owner of the company is probably his father, and that he himself is just a spoiled son of rich parents. Ling Tian is amazed by her words. The guy did not expect that the teacher would doubt his words. The teacher looks at Ling Tian with a serious expression and tells him that she is now completely sure that he is the son of a rich father. She adds that, as a teacher, she needs to give him some advice. The girl starts with the first point, explaining that he, as the heir to a wealthy family, should not worry about food. At this moment, Ling Tian thinks that last month he could not afford enough food and his diet was extremely meager. The teacher continues, she says that he doesn't need to worry about his clothes either. A young man with tears in his eyes remembers his old, worn-out white underpants, which after being washed with jeans turned blue stripes, but he continues to wear them to save money. By bending her third finger, the teacher asserts that he does not have to work at all. This time, Ling Tian agrees with her words, recalling how just yesterday he fired the store's general manager and now, indeed, has no job. The teacher explains to Ling Tian that he should pay more attention to social practice since he only earned 2 points and he needs to do an internship to increase his score. Ling Tian, smiling, says that he will be happy to fulfill her request, adding that he recently found a construction site for his company's building and will soon go there to help unload the bricks. The teacher is pleased that the young man obeys her unquestioningly and asks the guy to be extremely careful and take care of himself. Ling Tian says goodbye to the teacher and tells her that he needs to leave her because he has to go to work. At parting, the girl reminds that the young man must actively devote time to social internship because if he does not fulfill the necessary conditions, he will definitely not receive a diploma at the end of his studies. In a dark corner of the corridor stands Zhan Li, who, hiding in the shadows, has been listening attentively to the conversation between Ling Tian and the teacher all this time, trying to figure out what was happening and learn more about the young man's plans. Zhan Li is very happy about the news that his arch-rival may not receive his diploma. A sly smile appears on his face, as he is convinced that the young man will never be able to earn the necessary social points to receive a diploma. Zhan Li picks up the phone and calls his father. He asks how he is doing and says that he has been really short of money lately. The father, after listening to his son, tells him that it is not a problem and he will soon allocate the required amount, after which he adds that he is very busy and immediately hangs up. A stranger standing next to Zhan Li's father says that many parents give their children a lot of money and there is nothing wrong with that. To which the father agrees and states that for their family such amounts are just small change that do not pose any problem. However, the stranger reports that he heard that the family's funds were recently frozen and asks with interest where Zhan Li's father plans to get money for his son. The man is irritated by the stranger's remark and angrily asks who exactly told him such nonsense. He does not understand how such personal details could have become known. A satisfied smile appears on the stranger's face. After a short pause, he confidently informs him that he knows about the man's divorce from his wife and advises him to quickly register his property in his own name before something worse happens. The man, unable to bear it, becomes enraged and loudly shouts at the stranger, Asking who he is and why the stranger is secretly monitoring his personal life, he clearly feels threatened by the fact that his private affairs are under surveillance. The stranger takes a business card out of his pocket and asks the man to think about it, hoping that he will accept his offer. The stranger then throws the card on the floor and turns around and starts to walk out of the room, telling the man that if anything happens to his restaurant, he has nothing to do with it. As the stranger leaves, the man drops to the floor and with trembling hands picks up a business card that has no detailed information on it, only the name Fanpei printed on it. Ling Tian is at the construction site of his new office, busily assisting the workers. The guy stops after a long day of work and thinks that carrying bricks is the best way to get rid of various negative thoughts. Dodo affectionately calls the builders brothers and loudly informs them that she has brought lunch. Ling Tian stands in line, really hoping that there will be a big chicken leg in the lunchbox today. Dodo hesitantly calls the young man his boss and hands him his lunchbox. Ling Tian asks the girl to be less familiar and tells her that they are now one family. At this moment, a huge worker snatches the business lunch from Ling Tian's hands and rudely asks the young man why he is staring at him. Ling Tian looks at the man with irritation. He asks him why he is not standing in line. The huge big guy tells the guy that if he does not want trouble, he should keep quiet. Dodo, clearly shocked by what is happening, tries to intervene and explain to the big guy that Ling Tian is the owner of the entire organization. But she does not have time to finish her thought. The huge man suddenly turns to her and rudely states that he has never seen her here before and invites the girl to meet after work. Ling Tian is beside himself with rage. The young man is trying his best to restrain himself. He is very irritated by the behavior of the impudent huge worker, who behaves defiantly and does not respect others. Suddenly, Ling Tian stops his thoughts as a stranger quietly approaches him and places his hand on his shoulder, causing him to become distracted and stop thinking about the conflict. It turns out to be a strange guy who also works at the construction site. He asks Ling Tian not to interfere and not to argue with these people, assuring that this will only complicate the situation and lead to unnecessary consequences. Ling Tian is very surprised by this information and reasonably asks why he should not intervene and defend his position, because he believes that he should defend his rights. The guy tells the main character that this healthy worker has a dark past and used to be a member of a gang, which makes him a dangerous and unpredictable person. The big guy, noticing their whispering, asks the young people what they are whispering about behind his back, after which he threatens that if they get in his way, he will beat them severely. Suddenly, the huge man loses interest in the young people as he receives an urgent message on his phone. He steps aside and says in an angry voice that he will deal with them later. Ling Tian finds this behavior very impudent. The young man next to him is very afraid, clearly worried that the situation could get out of control. The guy asks Ling Tian not to leave, as the big guy will be back soon and he might get into big trouble. Ling Tian tells the guy that he has no problems. On the contrary, he notes that the big guy will have problems since he is the boss of this organization. This statement greatly surprises the young man. He cannot believe that his new acquaintance is the boss of this company. A huge worker approaches a stranger standing in the shadows, calls him brother, and asks what he can do for him today. The stranger is pleased that there are people he has planted at the construction site. He says that it is time to implement a small plan. Ling Tian carefully watches the huge worker and the mysterious stranger standing in the dark. The young man realizes that they are clearly up to something, which makes him anxious. At this time, a group of hooligans surrounded the guy and Dodo. They speak rudely and behave extremely aggressively, trying to intimidate the young people. The guy tells the hooligans that he is not going to give them the money he earned at this construction site, and hopes that Ling Tian will return soon and help him. The hooligans call the young man a fool. They are sure that no one will help him. And then they begin to beat him because he does not give them the money he earned. One of the hooligans picks up a shovel and mockingly asks the young man if it will hurt if he hits him with a shovel. Dodo is very scared and understands that she can do nothing to help the young man, while the guy humbly awaits his fate. The next moment, a loud crash is heard, breaking the fence of the construction site, and a bus drives onto it. Ling Tian asks the hooligan with the shovel with a grin if it will hurt him if he gets hit by a bus. The man who wanted to hit the young man with a shovel is trying to get to his feet. He is demoralized and clearly scared, as he did not expect such a turn of events. Ling Tian gets off the bus and asks the bully why he is causing trouble for good people. The man calls Ling Tian a stupid upstart and asks if he even knows who their boss is, trying to intimidate him and regain control of the situation. A huge worker approaches the scene of the altercation. Next to him is the man who had previously chased the teacher. They both head towards the group, clearly intending to intervene in what is happening. Ling Tian notices the men approaching. A smile appears on his face. He ironically tells the gang leader that they haven't seen each other for a long time, and ironically asks if he wants to scare him. The man, who lost 2 teeth in the previous fight with Lingtian, is clearly uncomfortable and is trying to somehow get out of this awkward situation. Lingtian reminds the man that he beat him up badly last time and asks him to stop attacking the workers if he doesn't want it to happen again. The big guy starts to feel very angry. He asks Lingtian who he thinks he is and demands that he immediately stop talking to his little brother in that tone. Lingtian starts laughing loudly and suggests that the big guy ask his little brother about the recent confrontation, which once again puts the bandit in an awkward position. The big guy is very surprised by such words. He did not expect that someone in this area could not be afraid of their group. His confidence begins to waver. Suddenly, the huge giant gets hit on his helmet with a hand, which makes him very angry. He turns sharply and asks in an angry voice who is tired of living. The big guy is determined to deal with the impudent guy. A moment later, his anger changes to strong surprise. An elderly woman appears next to him. His facial expression changes when he realizes who is in front of him. The woman turns out to be the mother of a huge giant. She starts to pull his ears and scold him for being so big and still continuing to misbehave. The woman continues to scold and slap her son, declaring that, unlike his friends, she is not afraid of him at all. After which the old lady begins to thank Lingtian. She is glad that the guy told her about the incident, since her son is a bad boy and he could have made a serious mistake. A pioneer tie begins to flutter on Lingtian's chest. He tells the woman that helping people is his passion. The guy expresses his willingness to act for the sake of justice. The old woman takes her son away from the construction site despite his displeasure. Lingtian, calmly watching the events, tells the gang leader that now is the time for them to talk. The man says that he did not want to inconvenience the young people at all, and that his boss made him do what happened. Lingtian tells the man that he will not hold a grudge against him if he tells everything about his employer, and does him one favor. The guy offers a chance to avoid unpleasant consequences. The man is very scared and tells the young man that there are strict rules and he cannot do something like that. It is not so easy for him to break the established laws of his group. Lingtian holds up a huge plastic bag filled to the brim with thick wads of banknotes, which he slowly hands over to the man standing in front of him. The gang leader, seeing a huge amount of money, falls into a hypnotic state. His gaze becomes empty and saliva begins to flow from his mouth. He quietly remarks that such behavior is not good. The man, unable to resist temptation, reveals his boss's name to Lingtian, but immediately warns him that these people are extremely dangerous. Lingtian calmly assures the man that he shouldn't worry, as he has the right connections and is planning to do something truly grand. Coming closer to the man, Lingtian begins to whisper the details of his plan to him, which leaves the interlocutor in a state of intense horror and complete confusion. Cao Bilo expresses his strong irritation, stating that he will never, under any circumstances, participate in such matters. Lingtian, looking at the streamer, coldly tells her that she has no right to do this because a girl should always obey her boss and follow his instructions. Cao Bilo continues to resolutely refuse the offer, adding that Lingtian has no right to force her to take such actions. Lingtian bursts into loud laughter in response, claiming that his guests only want to have fun with the girl, and that he, as a gracious host, is only trying to please them. The streamer, looking at the young man with disgust, notes that she would never have thought that he would be the kind of person capable of such actions. Lingtian leaves the room, leaving a cold reminder about the consequences of breaking the contract, which could be extremely serious for the girl. Lingtian is confident that Cao Bilo will eventually agree, as she was well aware that breach of contract would entail extremely severe and costly consequences. The streamer responds by shouting loudly after the guy, calling him a bastard, and in a fit of anger, she takes her shoe off her foot. Without thinking, Cao Bilo throws his shoe with all his might at the door through which Lingtian came out, declaring that he will regret this and will definitely be punished. Having decided to take action, Cao Bilo calls his old assistant and asks him to turn to a certain person for support. However, the old man expresses his obvious dissatisfaction and firmly states that they can, under no circumstances, ask for help from this man, because the consequences could be even worse. The girl confidently declares that this man is the only one who can help them in the current situation, and the only one who is not driven by greed and money. The aged assistant falls on his knees before Cao Bilo, addresses her as mistress and begs her to think carefully about her decision, warning that this man may force them into eternal debt to him. Cao Bilo looks at her assistant with irritation and asks sharply, since when he considers he has the right to speak to her in such a tone. After this, the girl resolutely leaves the room, adding that the old man has only 1 hour to bring her old friend here. A young man sitting in a cafeteria addresses Cao Bilo with a slight smile, calling her madam, and admits that he has long wanted to meet her. Cao Bilo calmly notes that Fan Pei's name sounds beautiful, like spring thunder, but also hints that there are terrible rumors circulating about him in society. Fan Pei, keeping calm, tells the girl that she shouldn't exaggerate because people tend to make up stories and create crazy gossip. Cao Bilo begins to detail her difficult situation and the main reason why she decided to invite Fan Pei to this place. However, Fan Pei suddenly asks her to be quiet, explaining that he just wants to watch her and enjoy her beauty in complete silence. At this moment, the guy's eyes begin to glow with an unnatural light. He wants to penetrate into the most secret thing that is hidden in the depths of her heart. Cao Bilo suddenly feels a strange energy field surrounding her, absorbing her will, and Fan Pei's icy gaze pierces through her, leaving her completely defenseless. Under the influence of these forces, Cao Bilo begins to remember the most tragic moment of her life, the accident in which her family's car was reduced to a pile of scrap metal, taking the lives of everyone except her. Little Cao Bilo looks at the mangled remains of the car, barely able to comprehend what is happening, while a crowd of onlookers gathers around her, animatedly discussing the terrible disaster. The girl recalls how after that tragedy, she had to live on the street, where there were many street gangs with whom she constantly encountered. She did not allow herself to be humiliated and always fought back. Once in a fight with a group of hooligans, she used a building brick to win. Over time, Cao Bilo managed to unite the hooligans around himself and create his own group, which took control of one of the city's districts. Fan Pei, using his unique abilities, sees the girl's past and is amazed that she managed to survive on the streets and become a leader among local gangsters. He finds her story truly fascinating. Cao Bilo is stunned and does not hide her surprise, asking Fan Pei how he managed to find out such details about her life. A satisfied smile appears on Fan Pei's face and he calmly replies that the girl is now in his debt. Cao Bilo, still confused, asks Fan Pei if she understood his words correctly, and if he really intends to help her in her current difficult situation. Fan Pei reports that this is indeed the case and informs the surprise streamer that the problem lies with a person named Ling Tian. Cao Bilo is shocked that Fan Pei already knows about this, even though she hasn't told him anything yet. The guy explains that Ling Tian has become a serious problem, and many people have been begging him to intervene lately. Cao Bilo is sitting at a table on which refreshments are laid out. The girl is experiencing strong irritation, since for her receiving guests is an extremely unpleasant activity. She imagines with disgust how she will have to smile, entertain, and in every way please drunk and wealthy men who are disgusting to her. Despite this, the girl is convinced that Fan Pei will be able to help her, because she believes that he will be stronger than Ling Tian. Checking the radio earpiece in his ear, Cao Bilo is preparing to start the operation, and counts on Fan Pei's support. Fan Pei is at this point on the street, near the entrance to the restaurant, checking the connection quality and informing Cao Bilo that the operation is starting. He then turns to his accomplice named Zhan Li. He gives him a clear order to go to the entrance of the restaurant and detain Ling Tian for at least a few minutes. Zhan Li bows low to the young man and calls him Lord, after which he immediately begins to carry out his instructions, showing complete submission. Fan Pei takes out a powerful optical device from his pocket and is about to take a closer look at the next mystery, hoping to solve another riddle. Ling Tian whistles a cheerful tune and slowly approaches an expensive European restaurant, enjoying the moment. Suddenly, at the door of the restaurant, the young man runs into Zhan Li, who is carrying out tasks. Ling Tian mockingly calls his old acquaintance a student with a shiny bald head and asks how he can help him. Zhan Li tries to start a conversation to pass the time. He asks the young man what he is doing in such an expensive establishment. Ling Tian says that it is none of his business, then says that he is in a hurry and does not have time to chat unnecessarily. Zhan Li thinks that he needs to detain Ling Tian by any means. He rudely shouts at the guy and asks him to wait. Ling Tian is visibly nervous and asks his classmate why he is bothering him and what else he wants. The guy tries to understand what Zhan Li is up to. Zhan Li says that this restaurant belongs to his family. The guy can tell the chefs to prepare a table for Ling Tian. Ling Tian tells the young man that there is no need for this, and if he has no more questions, he asks not to detain him. Zhan Li shouts loudly at the young man, then tells him that Ling Tian is grossly breaking the law. Zhan Li walks inside the restaurant and loudly calls out to everyone present, declaring that he has an important message. Ling Tian looks at the young man in surprise and asks how and where he broke the law. He is perplexed by the accusations. Zhan Li points to the room where the streamer is and says that this is the room where Ling Tian streamers are receiving guests. Ling Tian asks the young man to show evidence and tells him that his business is honest, assuring him that there is no violation of the law. Janli doesn't believe a single word. The guy resolutely heads to the door to see for himself that the law has been violated. He opens the doors with a sharp movement and freezes in place. After a while, when his surprise passes, he quietly asks Lingtian who these strange guests are. The guy does not believe his eyes. Inside the room is a streamer, surrounded by a large group of children who are happily playing with her, creating an atmosphere of fun and carefreeness. Not at all like what Janli expected to see. Lingtian arrogantly turns to the young man and tells him that he has made a very serious mistake. Janli is very upset because the guests are small children. The young man thought that the streamer would host rich adults and do all sorts of obscenities, which did not come true. Lingtian casts a haughty glance at the guy and says in a low voice that he is an idiot, clearly despising him for his stupidity. Janli realizes his loss. The guy turns around and leaves. With the last of his strength, he tries to contain his irritation, realizing that he could not prove his case. Lingtian tells the girl that there is no one in the whole world who can make children laugh better. He assures her that her work is important. Cao Bilo is trying her best to hold on. She is really fed up with the long hours of company with a huge number of young fans who do not give her any peace. Fanpei is on the roof of a nearby building. With the help of a telescope, the guy looks at what is happening inside the restaurant. He wonders what is happening there. He watches Lingtian and the streamer closely, trying to figure out the situation. Fanpei notices that an incomprehensible digital code has been implanted into the young man's body, which makes him suspicious and wants to know more. The young people stand by the window and enjoy the cool evening air. The evening seems calm and carefree. Lingtian notices that the girl is noticeably nervous and asks her what is the matter. Cao Bilo sadly tells the young man that she was wrong and thought that the guy would use her for some selfish and immoral purposes. Lingtian slowly eats the snacks and tells the girl that he can't believe she thought he would want to force her to do something like that. Cao Bilo angrily reports that the young man misled her and did not explain anything clearly, so she thought that she would not be communicating with children, but with a completely different contingent of people. Today's guest reception was a free experience. Tomorrow, Lingtian is going to make the first transaction with the streamer and complete part of the task from the monetary system. The most challenging part of the young man's main assignment was setting up the company and hiring employees, which required a careful approach. Lingtian is deep in thought and doesn't notice a young man approaching him and colliding with him forcefully. Fanpei apologizes and tells the guy that he was extremely inattentive, after which Lingtian and the streamer head to the bus. The girl looks back at Fanpei, who secretly smiles at her, as if enjoying this moment and his cunning plan. Fanpei approached the guy to carefully examine his mental body, but so far he does not understand anything and only sees that the binary code gives the number 11%, which makes him even more curious. Fanpei quietly repeats Lingtian's name. He says that the young man intrigued him very much because there is something unusual and mysterious about him. As the bus slowly pulls away from the restaurant building, Janli's voice is heard asking how else he can help. Fanpei believes that there is no need to engage the new enemy directly, but rather wants to deal with the people around him first. The teacher is checking the student's homework when she receives a message on her cell phone, which clearly attracts her attention. The message was sent by a doctor. The girl asks him how her father is doing and whether he has gotten better. She is worried about his health and condition. After a while, the teacher's expression changes dramatically. She is clearly alarmed by what the doctor told her, something that is bothering her and causing anxiety. Dodo is sitting by the window and slowly reading a book. At this moment, she also receives a message on her cell phone. The girl happily calls the landlord back and informs him that she can pay this month's rent right now. She feels satisfied with the opportunity to resolve this issue. After a while, her expression loses all signs of joy and becomes serious and upset. She seems to have received bad news. Cao Bilo is sitting on her phone, analyzing her stream statistics when she receives a message that catches her attention. The girl makes a call, introduces herself, and starts a conversation with the interlocutor. A few seconds later, her eyes fill with fear and tension. She understands the seriousness of what is happening, and her calm disappears. She listens silently to her interlocutor for quite a long time, after which she says that she understands everything. Cao Bilo is deep in thought. She has no idea what Lingtian is planning and what he is going to do next. Lingtian is at his desk in his office. The guy is very annoyed by the fact that none of his employees are answering him. He feels growing dissatisfaction. He looks closely at the cards of his employees lying on the table and does not understand why they all quit without saying a word to him. Lingtian doesn't know what to do next. At this time, the money system reports that the completion percentage of the main task has been reduced. This adds even more anxiety and uncertainty. The guy answers the incoming call and asks again what kind of race it is. why it is the final one, and when it will take place. The next task of the system is that the guy needs to win the race using the same car as the first time. Lingtian hears a loud sound at the door. The guy opens it and sees Fanpei in front of him. He asks about the correct address of the company and says that he came for an interview. Lingtian says that everything is correct and invites the young man to come inside. He says that he posted a job ad and is glad to welcome the guy. Fanpei looks closely at the young man's mental body. He notices that the number in the binary code has become much smaller and wonders what this could mean. Fanpei believes that he will definitely figure it out later, but for now, he needs to concentrate on the final race to prevent Lingdian from winning it. The judge tells the race participants that the final will be a little different. The route of this race is longer than all the previous ones. Ling Tian learns that he needs to go from the central part of the city to the eastern part to get the mark, and then go to the west, where the finish line will be. The judge informs the participants that the winner of the race will receive membership in the Divine Heroes Club. He then throws a stack of contracts towards the participants and says that the losers will be required to give up everything of value they have, which surprises the participants and makes them focus even more on the race. This information greatly surprises Ling Tian. The guy is indignant and asks why no one told him about this before. The judge begins to wave the flag vigorously, after which he counts down the start time. Ling Tian tells Fanpei that he has high hopes for him. The guy says that his company is not very valuable, but he still can't lose it. A sly smile appears on Fanpei's face. The young man says that he understands everything and asks not to worry about it. In fact, Fanpei intends to do everything possible to make Ling Tian lose. He wants to see what his face will look like after the guy loses his company. The judge gives the command to start. The next second, powerful sports cars roar forward. The air is filled with excitement and passion. This time, the race is broadcast live. The presenters announce that the competition has begun and the Queen of the Night is leading the race. The broadcast is conducted from a helicopter that watches the racers, which gives viewers a unique perspective on what is happening from a bird's-eye view. The presenter says that the Queen of the Night has pulled ahead. This year, many have tried to break her winning streak. The girl says that the champion lost to a mysterious dark horse in the previous race, but now she has upgraded her car and may continue her winning streak. The presenter reports that a strange ghost bus is participating in the races. She says that it moves slowly but steadily. This creates intrigue around the unusual participant. The girl informs the audience that this racer is most likely using the tortoise and the hare strategy, and recommends that the audience look up this parable on the internet. Fanpei addresses Ling Tian, calling him boss, and tells him that their car is too slow to win. He expresses doubts about their chances of winning. Ling Tian asks the young man not to worry and says that he has everything planned. Ling Tian dials the police number and tries to get through, but no one picks up the phone on the other end, which makes him feel uneasy. A sly smile appears on Fanpei's face. The guy smiles at the young man's words. He has it all planned out, because this evening he turned off the cellular connection along the entire route of the race. Ling Tian is very surprised that he couldn't get through to the police station. The guy thinks that in this case, he will have to use Plan B, which he calls super acceleration. Ling Tian orders his new driver to urgently change the route. Fanpei is very surprised and asks the young man why to do this, because this road leads to the other side of the city, namely to the south. Ling Tian replies that everything is correct and informs them that only with a workaround will they be able to accelerate as needed. Meanwhile, the rest of the race participants arrive at the checkpoints, which are located in the eastern part of the city. Zhanli believes that his main rival's bus is too slow, and he is confident that he will not be able to improve his position in this race in any way. The guy reaches his hand out the car window to put a mark. He looks very pleased. He was the first to arrive at the checkpoint. Zhanli removes his hand and immediately stops. His attention is drawn to something strange, which makes him wary, and think that it was just an illusion. But the guy looks closely and sees a snowflake. Zhanli is very surprised by what is happening. He looks at the snow slowly falling from the sky and does not understand at all why this is happening in the middle of summer. A loud sound is heard in the sky, and the attention of all the racers is drawn to huge transport planes that spray huge amounts of snow over the city, turning the streets into a snowy labyrinth. The Lingtian bus has undergone major changes. Now, instead of the usual wheel pairs, it has skis, thanks to which the vehicle moves much faster, sliding on the snow surface. Ling Tian plays with the snowball, smiling contentedly, thinking that it is easy to roll on the snow and accelerate the bus, which gives him a great advantage. Many of the race participants are unable to control their cars, as the sudden appearance of black ice creates unbearably difficult conditions for continuing the competition. Janli also loses control and crashes into a pole at full speed, after which he gets out of the car onto the street and screams loudly, turning to higher powers with the question of why all this has fallen to his lot. Huge transport planes continue to circle the racetrack, dumping tens of tons of snow, turning the summer race into winter chaos. Ling Tian believes his plan was original, as the artificial snowfall he created caused huge problems for other race participants and allowed his bus to accelerate significantly. Fanpei gives the guy a displeased look, realizing that the detour through the southern part of the city was only necessary to get to the checkpoint. Fanpei realizes that Ling Tian has turned to a specialized firm to arrange snow delivery. The guy tells the manager that money is not a problem for him and demands to use planes, rockets, or artillery to deliver more snow. Ling Tian also adds that he needs a pair of tracks for the bus and orders them to wait for his signal to start the artificial snowfall. The bus continues to move confidently along the snowy racetrack. Fanpei considers his new boss a madman who is completely mismanaging his money and doubts that such an adventure was worth the investment. Fanpei assumes that the snow supply on the plains is already running low and asks Ling Tian if there will be more snow. Fanpei tries to persuade Ling Tian to abandon the snowfall idea and instead go to the competition office to bribe the judge, claiming it would be much easier and cheaper. Fanpei really hopes that Ling Tian will agree to his proposal, because in this case, his people will be able to catch the young man in the act, which will lead to a loss of reputation and money. However, Ling Tian dismisses this plan with obvious disdain, calling such a development pathetic, and orders an immediate rerouting of the bus, heading north. Fanpei doesn't understand his boss's logic at all and tries to figure out why he needs to go to the city center, risking losing precious time in the race. Ling Tian asks them not to ask unnecessary questions and just follow his instructions, assuring them that his plan will lead them to victory in the competition. Fanpei can hardly contain his irritation, increasingly considering Ling Tian to be crazy, as he sees no logic or clear intentions in his actions. Ling Tian reminds Fanpei that today is his first day on the job and urges him not to waste time and to show his best side. The bus continues moving along the snowy road with ease, confidently rushing towards the northern part of the city at high speed. A helicopter carrying television reporters circles near the finish line, and the presenter announces that there are only a few miles left in the race. She notes that the first group of racers has already appeared on the horizon and expresses surprise that among them, there is no Queen of the Night, who always leads. Xueqing believes that there will be an unpleasant surprise at the finish line, because she does not believe that Ling Tian is capable of competing fairly. She notices several cars in front of her that, like her, have so far avoided the traps, and she realizes that the moment has come for a decisive acceleration. Xueqing presses the nitrous booster button on the dashboard. Her car suddenly takes off into the air, overtaking her rivals and taking the lead. The presenter reports that the Queen of the Night has appeared on the track and suggests that the champion was specifically saving her strength for the decisive dash before the finish. Xueqing hears a loud and sharp sound of an approaching train, which makes her very surprised and anxious. The girl instantly realizes that this is a trap and slams on the brakes to avoid a collision. She watches as a train passes in front of her at great speed, which should not be here at all, since its schedule is clearly disrupted. The Queen of the Night is absolutely certain that what is happening is planned by Ling Tian, and does not doubt for a second his involvement in the sudden appearance of the train. Despite the obstacles that have arisen, the girl still holds the lead in the race, but an unexpected sight confuses her. Ling Tian begins to talk about an old proverb, stating that behind every successful man, there is always a woman who silently supports him. His bus ends up hooked up to a moving locomotive, allowing him to suddenly jump into first place. The young man triumphantly notices that he is already very close to the finish line and gives the command to activate the bus's transformation. The bus uncouples from the locomotive. Ling Tian enthusiastically orders his driver to cross the finish line as quickly as possible. Xueqing watches as the bus slowly approaches the finish line, but is unable to give chase as the railway crossing remains closed. The girl believes that what is happening is beyond all bounds, and declares that she too has her own secret trump card. Xueqing presses the large button located on the steering wheel, and instantly her racing car begins to transform. Within seconds, Weiqing's car transforms into a racing motorcycle, after which she immediately starts chasing the bus. The girl quickly drives around the railroad crossing and turns on the nitro mode, hoping to get ahead and win the final stage of the race. Fanpei takes a close look at the rearview mirror and comes to the conclusion that Ling Tian has used a rather cunning plan to block the opponents. Fanpei ponders whether Ling Tian is an incredibly intelligent person or a madman who was simply blessed with divine grace. Ling Tian looks out the bus window, sighs heavily, and states that he is sad because he has no worthy opponents. Xueqing presses the throttle on his motorcycle to the floor and races towards the bus, aiming to finish the race first. Ling Tian notices a girl approaching him on a motorcycle. He is very surprised as he did not expect to see anything like this. Xueqing tells the guy that he's not the only one with a plan B and assures him that he's definitely lost this time. Despite the situation, Ling Tian seems completely calm. He carefully examines the girl and gently says that today she is wearing black again. Fan Pei asks the guy what black color he's talking about, because the girl is wearing a silver suit with colored inserts. He continues to ask his new boss why they are not speeding up, since the girl has already overtaken them, and if this continues, they will lose the race. Ling Tian confidently tells the guy that they have already won this race. Xueqing watches carefully as she moves away from the bus. Only a few hundred meters left until the finish line, and she thinks she has won. Xueqing presses the gas pedal to the floor and flies across the finish line at incredible speed. The presenter joyfully announces that the winner has already been determined, and the Queen of the Night has taken first place. The TV reporter says that the winner was again the Queen of the Night, whose car evolved into a motorcycle. The presenter announces that second place is at stake, and a strange ghost bus is approaching the finish line. Xueqing looks defiantly at Ling Tian, who is looking out of the bus window and tells the guy that he has lost. To her surprise, the bus does not stop, but continues to move slowly and leisurely, which surprises not only the girl but also the presenter. The broadcast presenter reports that it seems that this driver is unable to admit his defeat and cannot come to terms with second place, so he intends to run away. Ling Tian looks out of the bus window and loudly announces that it is time to finish, after which he offers to collect his wages for the work done. The group of people who were at the finish line holding the finishing ribbons throw them on the ground and start running towards the bus. Xueqing and the broadcast host standing next to her are stunned and don't fully understand what's going on. Suddenly, Weiqing has an epiphany, and the girls instantly realize that this finish was not real. A cheering crowd of people tosses Ling Tian in the air and congratulates him on winning this intense race. Xueqing feels extremely irritated. She can't accept that she was so cleverly deceived this time, and this makes her uneasy. Fan Pei, in turn, cannot understand how Ling Tian manages to defeat such strong and charismatic personalities. He is amazed by this. Xueqing, with malice in his voice, replies that the guy should probably know better, and sarcastically calls him the #1 eye that can see right through. After some time, the girl again turns to the young man and asks why he cannot cope with Ling Tian. Fan Pei explains that he is unable to fully scan Ling Tian's mental body, but still admires his abilities a little. Once again, scanning the guy's mental body, Fan Pei notices that the numbers on his body have changed, but he still cannot understand what they mean. This causes confusion and anxiety in him. Ling Tian praises Fan Pei for his work and smiles as he allows him to add a chicken leg to his dinner. Xueqing, unexpectedly for himself, learns that it was Ling Tian who invited all the spectators at the finish line. And what's more, he organized a live broadcast. With pride, like a true winner, Ling Tian declares that all these people present are now employees of his company, which earns the respect and admiration of those around him. The crowd surrounding the young man begins to cheer and chant his name loudly, showing obvious sympathy. Ling Tian, as if nothing had happened, suddenly offers Fan Pei to bring back all those people who quit. Fan Pei, not suspecting a trick, falls for this trick and asks the guy in bewilderment if these people didn't tell him anything. Ling Tian instantly casts an angry and piercing glance at the young man, which makes Fan Pei feel an uncomfortable tension. Fan Pei realizes that he made a serious mistake because he should not have known anything about those people. He thinks that he fell for a trick, and this becomes a clear nuisance for him. In an attempt to get out of the awkward situation and somehow smooth over the moment, Fan Pei decides to change the subject and suggests that everyone loudly celebrate this victory, hoping to distract attention from his mistake. Ling Tian sees no point in throwing a party for the people gathered, believing that it is enough to simply hand out money and everyone present will be happy, which will save a lot of time and effort. He says goodbye to the people around him and asks Fan Pei to take the wheel, preparing for the next stage of his plan. Despite his outward calm, Ling Tian actually thinks that his new employee is not as simple as he seems at first glance, and is clearly playing some kind of complex game that he cannot yet fully unravel. At this time, Fan Pei, carefully scanning the young man, admits that he is indeed not simple and is a serious opponent, which causes him to have a certain respect. The racing queen watches as the huge bus slowly pulls away, still unable to accept her defeat. The girl hits her motorcycle with all her might, expressing dissatisfaction and anger. Xueqing is very annoyed not only because she lost but also because FanPay failed, which only adds to her anger. The girl begins to transform her motorcycle, deciding it's time to teach Lingtian a lesson. The Lingtian bus arrives at the huge house of the #1 streamer. Lingtian slowly opens the front door and carefully walks inside the house, preparing to meet the girl. The young man stops at the threshold and is greatly surprised by what he sees in front of him. His old friend, a police inspector, is in the house and is now talking to Cao. Everything that is happening seems strange to him. The police inspector, in an accusing tone, tells the girl that all the evidence points to her and threatens that she will not be able to escape punishment this time, which makes Lingtian anxious. Lingtian, feeling awkward, greets the girls inside the house and, not understanding what is happening, asks what is going on here. The guy hopes to get at least some kind of explanation. The police inspector, looking at Lingtian with displeasure, asks him what relation he has to this girl, who, as she claims, is in a gang. Cao, without holding back her emotions, begins to shout loudly at the young man, accusing him of the fact that all the troubles began precisely after she began communicating with him, and this clearly irritates her. Lingtian, holding back his irritation, denies all the accusations made against him and thinks that this scene reminds him of the legendary battle of the Greek goddesses, where there were also many disputes and accusations. Lingtian, unable to bear it, loudly shouts at the girls and orders them to shut up immediately, demanding an explanation from them about what is actually happening and hoping for a clearer explanation. The girls, hearing his demand, stop arguing and, silently looking at each other, their gazes are full of decisive challenge, which for a moment creates an atmosphere of tense anticipation. At some point, turning synchronously to the young man, they begin to explain their points of view to him. Cao tries to explain that the inspector is falsely accusing her of fraud related to the recent incident on the platform. The girl assures the young man that she was not involved in what happened. Lingtian, holding back his emotions, asks the girl to be silent, which causes her to react angrily. She turns away, showing her dissatisfaction with his actions. Lingtian, despite her reaction, asks the police officer to sit down and calmly explain his side of the story, wanting to understand what exactly happened. The police inspector begins to tell us that this morning there have been numerous cases of fraud which have caused quite a stir. The streaming platform, as it turned out, launched a promotion with discounts on balance replenishment, and users began to receive large percentages of cashback on their accounts, which quickly attracted many participants. Lingtian, upon hearing this news, is very upset, although he does not show it, and feels that this is a big loss since he could get an extra 10 yuan for every 50 yuan he tops up his account. The inspector continues his story and reports that a huge number of people took part in this action, but serious problems soon arose. The management and moderators of this service instantly disappeared, which caused panic among users. Lingtian, not hiding his concern, decides to check with the inspector and asks if they disappeared along with the money. The police inspector, confirming the young man's suspicions, reports that the only person they could find in connection with this incident is Cao, and she is one of the main suspects. The girl, hearing such accusations, is very surprised because she has absolutely nothing to do with the company that carried out this action, and this greatly offends her. Cao is very irritated by such accusations. She tries to justify herself, but her speech becomes unclear, since her rage does not allow her to clearly formulate her thoughts. The young man, noticing that the situation is getting out of control, asks the streamer to calm down and stop yelling, while he says that he believes her and is ready to support her, despite the accusations. Cao, hearing Lingtian's words, falls silent, withdrawing into herself, tears appearing in her eyes, indicating her emotional reaction to what is happening. Lingtian, confident that he is right, tells the police inspector that he has implicit trust in his employees and is ready to take full responsibility. After which, with full confidence, Lingtian tells the police inspector that he takes full blame for his streamer, which becomes the decisive moment in this tense situation. The inspector remembers that the young man has already helped the police more than once, so he decides to give him a simple warning, deciding not to escalate the situation. She begins to move towards the exit, announcing that a special investigation team has been created for this case, and tells the young men that they have a maximum of 2 days to figure out what is happening and find a solution. A satisfied smile appears on Lingtian's face. Because he thinks that 2 days is more than enough to resolve all issues, he was clearly prepared for such incidents. Lingtian, feeling confident, turns around abruptly and looks at the girl in surprise, who silently pulls his hand, indicating that she wants to say something. Sao Bilo is grateful for the help and support. The girl expresses her gratitude because she recently quit her job, and the young man, despite this, continues to help her, which causes her deep respect. Ling Tian, responding to the streamer, says that despite all the difficulties, she is still a great employee. Looking closely at the girl, he cannot help but notice that she is truly beautiful. Sao Bilo looks silently into the young man's eyes, and for a moment there is a romantic pause in which silence and tense anticipation reign. But the silence of this romantic pause is suddenly broken by a woman who enters the room and coughs loudly, making her presence known, which immediately disrupts the atmosphere. The young men instantly come to their senses, turning sharply towards the girl who had just entered the room. This girl turns out to be the former manager of Lingtian, but now she has a short haircut, which gives her a new, more determined look. The manager informs the young man that his predictions have come true and that he can now begin to act. Sao Bilo, feeling guilty for her past actions, asks the manager for forgiveness for previously hypnotizing her and arranging the attack with the help of her adjutant. The manager replies that the hypnosis has long since worn off, and at the moment she has quit her main job, becoming exclusively Ling Tian's personal assistant, which confirms her commitment to the business. The young man is pleased with her decision. He praises the girl for her actions and offers to take care of the fugitives as soon as possible. Once outside, Sao Bilo couldn't help but ask how the young man could have known that a fraudulent broadcast operation was about to take place. Ling Tian, calmly responding, said he simply had a vague feeling that something was about to happen, so he sent people to bus stations, airports, and highways in advance. The manager reports that several individuals have used these travel routes, but there have been some minor issues with tracking, indicating the complexity of the investigation. She shows a photo of Litzen, one of the shareholders who ran away with the money, which causes the young men to focus on his identity. The young man looks closely at Litzen's photo and asks the manager if an investigation has already been conducted. The guy is trying to understand what stage the case is at. The girl replies that they have taken the object into development and that he will be participating in an online gaming tournament tonight, which gives Ling Tian information about his location. Hearing this, Ling Tian starts laughing loudly, greatly amused by the fact that the shareholder and criminal turned out to be a big fan of online games, which he finds unexpected and funny. He loudly announces that in online games, donations decide a lot, and that this is what he is especially good at. Fan Pei, trying to get on the bus with Ling Tian, suddenly encounters a young man blocking the entrance with his body and preventing him from doing so. Ling Tian, calmly and confidently, tells the guy that he is going home to play games and that he does not need to follow him. He suggests that everyone do their own thing. Fan Pei, however, believes that he needs to stay close to the young man to gather as much information as possible and offers to give Ling Tian a ride home. Ling Tian, pointing to the manager who is sitting behind the wheel of the bus, replies that the old employee has returned to him and therefore the guy is free and can rest. Fan Pei tries his best to stay with the young man, claiming that he can help in many ways and will do whatever his new boss tells him. He demonstrates persistence and a desire to be useful. The guy continues to do everything possible to stay on the bus and collect as much useful information as possible. Ling Tian, looking closely at the young man, notices that he is acting very strangely, which makes him suspicious of Fan Pei's motives. The bus doors slowly close and it starts to move. Fan Pei failed to persuade the young man and he was left on the street. The #1 streamer looks sadly at Fan Pei through the bus window, her inner thoughts full of contradictions, indicating her confusion. Suddenly, the girl stands up abruptly and tells the young man that his new employee is known as Fan Pei, and he is very difficult. Ling Tian asks the girl if this new acquaintance is somehow connected with the closure of the broadcast. Sao Bilo reports that this is quite possible, since this guy is really very difficult and has serious connections and opportunities. Ling Tian starts laughing loudly, confidently declaring that he had long ago figured out Fan Pei and did not immediately believe that he was an ordinary person who was looking for a part-time job. Sao Bilo is very surprised and asks why the guy continues to pretend that he doesn't know anything. Ling Tian calmly states that this is part of his plan. When Fan Pei is around him, his tricks don't work. The table in the office is filled with numerous monitors behind which the player sits. Litzen shouts happily, stating that the 23rd player was a weakling whom he simply tore to shreds. This shows his confidence in his abilities and arrogance. Litzen controls his game character in an online game and thinks that no one else will dare to challenge him. However, in the online game, the character Ling Tian appears. The game system reports that a new opponent has entered the game and announces the start of the fight. Litzen believes that his new opponent is another weakling because the game character does not even have a beginner's kit. The man thinks that this is another teapot. The character Litzen raises his upgraded battle sword, his body instantly being enveloped in a powerful field of energy. Litzen feels a strong sense of joy. He starts laughing loudly and thinks that fighting such a player would be like beating a baby. This only emphasizes his arrogance. Suddenly, the smile disappears from Litzen's face. He is very surprised and begins to peer closely at the game screen. The man cannot believe his eyes because something unusual is happening in the game. In a matter of seconds, the player character Ling Tian defeated his player without any equipment at all, which calls into question all the strategy and effort put into leveling up the character Litzen. The character Ling Tian's face lights up with a joyful smile, and he reports that the victory came to him quite easily. Litzen experiences a state of strong anger and goes into a rage. He hits the keyboard with all his might. The man does not understand how this could happen, because he spent a lot of time and a lot of money on his character. Litzen calms down and thinks about how a guy with no equipment was able to defeat his player, who was equipped with the best equipment of the Golden Gods. The man starts screaming loudly and comes to the conclusion that his opponent is a professional cheater. Ling Tian begins to mock his defeated opponent and asks the man if he can afford to buy such equipment. Litzen begins to think carefully about the situation and comes to the conclusion that his opponent used a powerful disguise that allowed him to win. The character Ling Tian has a legendary donation transparent armor, the drop rate of which is 1 in a million. Litzen is very upset by this fact. The man considered himself the #1 donor in this online game, and now his confidence is greatly shaken, as his status is under threat. On a wave of emotions, he makes a decision. He must use the remaining money to donate and upgrade his character. With trembling hands, he takes his bank card and thinks that he can't let his opponent remain a legend in this game. The man feels rage filling his heart. Litzen feels wild anger and hatred. He believes that he cannot afford to lose under any circumstances, because this victory has become something personal for him, affecting his pride and reputation. Litzen goes to the game's online store and enters the card number and password. The man experiences such a strong rage that his blows cause the keyboard keys to fly apart. The game system gives out lottery spins, in which Litzen wins the yellow color. He decides that if he uses the tried and tested usual tactics, then the gold color will be quite enough. He continues to furiously press the keys on his keyboard, trying to trigger more lottery spins, desperately hoping for luck. This time, luck is not on his side. He gets a very weak color, which further undermines his confidence. Litzen begins to feel despair. His attempts to trigger lottery spins again and again do not bring the desired result. He sinks deeper and deeper into a state of panic, not knowing how to get out of this situation. Litzen screams loudly from helplessness and anger. His emotional state is getting out of control because he cannot collect the required number of flowers from the offered spins. Out of frustration, he begins to cry loudly and wonders why all this has happened to him. He feels deep disappointment from the fact that he failed. After some time, he receives a private message. Litzen begins to wonder who the sender could be. In the message, Ling Tian asks if he wants the legendary donation transparent armor. The guy promises to sell it, which gives Litzen mixed feelings as he can't believe that such a rare armor could be offered to him. Litzen wants to buy this armor, but he thinks that his interlocutor clearly wants to make a big profit off of him, and doubts about possible deception begin to spin in his head. Litzen believes that he would rather die as a vegetable or jump off a building than let himself be deceived by some swindler. Ling Tian tells the man that he will not have another chance to become #1 in the game, and he will forever remain a legend, which at some point begins to influence his decision. Eventually, Litzen agrees to the young man's terms and purchases the phantom legendary armor for his character from him, deciding that this is the only way to regain his respect and status. Ling Tian tells the girls next to him that everything is done, and he got what he wanted. The guy feels satisfied with how successfully this deal went. Cao Bilo thinks the guy did it for her, and asks if he feels sorry for losing such a rare piece of equipment. These words greatly surprise Ling Tian. The guy replies that it is not rare, and he already has a dozen of such equipment. Ling Tian points to the virtual game cards. Indeed, he has several dozen sets of legendary transparent armor. Cao Bilo is unable to hide her surprise. The girl cannot believe that such a huge number of game artifacts can be in one hand. Ling Tian proudly shows the contract and tells the girl that he actually bought the game company. Cao Bilo is overwhelmed with delight by this statement from the young man. The girl asks the guy in surprise how he was able to do this. Ling Tian says he didn't exactly buy the gaming company, but rather traded it. Tears appear in Cao Bilo's eyes, and the girl begins to think that the young man exchanged the gaming company for her. Ling Tian is very surprised. The guy cannot understand how such thoughts could come into the girl's head. Cao Bilo instantly calms down when she realizes that this is not the case, and a satisfied smile appears on her face. Cao Bilo approaches the young man. The girl cannot get rid of the thought that he probably likes her, and this thought makes her feel excited. Ling Tian, in turn, starts laughing out loud, finding it funny that a gaming company could be exchanged for the #1 streamer. The manager, stunned by the situation, clutches her head with her hands. She is very surprised by what she's observing. It all reminds her of a ward for the mentally ill. Cao Bilo does not calm down. She continues to interrogate the young man. Her curiosity does not give her peace. The girl is still trying to figure out how he managed to become the owner of such a large gaming company. Ling Tian asks her to remember the rules of the recent race, where the loser had to give up his most valuable property. Ling Tian tells the girls that he traded several small companies he won in the race for 60% of the shares of this gaming company. After that, he asked the programmers to work on the game a little, adding numbers to the characteristics of his game character, which helped him win. Cao Bilo, after listening to him, thoughtfully wonders if the transparent legendary armor actually exists. Ling Tian, in turn, is completely immersed in the correspondence on the phone. He does not notice the girl at all, who continues to ask him questions. The manager understands that the so-called transparent armor is constantly changing, since programmers have the ability to interfere with it and adjust the data. The young man reports that he is truly happy at the moment because he not only got everything he dreamed of, but Litzen also donated him a huge amount of money. Cao Bilo asks if the young man now has proof of her innocence. Ling Tian responds sharply to the girl. He asks her to be quiet and says that he is working on it and cannot yet provide her with evidence of her innocence. The manager, watching what is happening, decides that she can no longer watch this, because the guy really does react to everything in an ironic and straightforward manner. Soon, Ling Tian suddenly jumps up from the table and suddenly suggests that the girls move to another place, which becomes an unexpected turn in their conversation. The young man reports that he has now received a list of everyone involved in the setup of streamer #1. Loud music is playing in a nightclub, and an unfamiliar girl in a mask is singing a song for the visitors. A rich man, sitting at a table, suddenly calls over a waiter and asks him why he hasn't seen this mysterious singer before. The waiter, trying to please the visitor, obligingly notes his good taste, adding that the new singer is truly beautiful and popular among the guests. The man is noticeably interested. He asks to describe what this girl looks like. His interest becomes more and more obvious. The waiter respectfully explains that the singer usually hides her face, but one day a girl from the staff accidentally saw her and said that she was incredibly beautiful, which further fuels the man's interest. Looking at the singer with a lustful gaze, the man decides to act and orders his men to immediately deliver her to his room. The huge giants, without a second's hesitation, begin to carry out their boss's order, while he calmly retreats to his room, confident that his order will be carried out. The bandits come out on stage, surrounding the singer from all sides. It becomes clear that the girl is clearly scared and trying to understand what is happening. Having gathered her courage, the singer indignantly addresses the men surrounding her, demanding to explain what they need and want. However, the huge giants completely ignore her questions. They do not say a word, and begin to stretch out their huge hands towards her, which only increases her fear and confusion. After some time, the girl finds herself in the private room of a wealthy man who lustfully declares that he is going to hurt her. However, despite the threats and obvious danger, a barely noticeable mysterious smile suddenly appears on the girl's face. The man says he wants to see her face and, holding out his trembling hands to her, suggests that they have some fun together. The girl, without showing resistance, allows the man to hug her, but continues to maintain a mysterious smile. Suddenly, the man's mood changes dramatically. He stares at the girl as if he sees something incredible. His face expresses genuine shock. The mafia boss is clearly scared. He starts to crawl away from the girl. The man screams loudly and demands that she immediately leave his room. As it turns out, the mysterious singer was Ling Tian all along, who suddenly takes off his mask and mockingly asks the mafia boss if he really doesn't want to have fun anymore. The man, experiencing deep disappointment, cannot come to his senses, still trying to understand where his beauty disappeared to and why he ended up in such a situation. Ling Tian, without missing a moment, begins to rudely scold the man, accusing him of impudence and shamelessness, and that he even dares to ask such questions after everything that happened. The guy, clearly indignant, declares that he is deeply offended by the man's words and defiantly asks him if he really is not good enough to satisfy his demands. Ling Tian, without hiding his anger, raises his voice and asks a sharp question. Is a man not able to accept him instead of his beauty, which sounds both sarcastic and mocking? The mafia boss, losing patience, orders the young man to get out of here nicely, as he cannot understand what he is getting at and does not want to continue this strange conversation. The man takes out a walkie-talkie and tells his men to come to his room immediately. He describes the situation and says that there is some dangerous, crazy pervert next to him. Responding to the call, the security guards immediately burst into the premises. She surrounds Ling Tian, who stands in the center of the room, and awaits further instructions from her boss. With the arrival of reinforcements, the mafia boss becomes noticeably more confident and, looking at the young man with contempt, declares that he has seriously spoiled his mood, for which he must now pay. At this point, Ling Tian, not hiding his irritation, rips off his woman's wig and loudly shouts that all this has gone too far. The guy loses the rest of his patience. He then forms a gun-like shape with his fingers, confidently pointing them at the mafia boss, adding even more tension and unpredictability to the scene. Ling Tian mockingly and confidently tells the man that although he has a sufficient number of well-trained guards, he himself has a gun. The man is noticeably shocked by such a performance. He begins to seriously think that in front of him is a person with obvious signs of mental instability. The mafia boss, trying to keep his cool, orders Ling Tian to stop his antics immediately, and then orders his men to immediately seize the young man. One of the guards, deciding to take action, raises his hand, intending to strike Ling Tian, who calmly points his pistol hands in his direction. Remaining confident, Ling Tian loudly tells the guard that he asked for it, then makes a sharp movement simulating a gunshot. At this moment, something incredible happens. The guard suddenly stops. His body freezes, as if he has lost the ability to move. To everyone's surprise, especially the mafia boss, the guard begins to slowly stagger, losing his balance, and then falls to the floor with a crash, causing complete silence in the room. After this, Ling Tian points his makeshift gun at the next guard and pretends to shoot again, which leads to an unexpected situation. This guard also falls down as if he was hit by a real bullet. Without stopping there, the guy starts shooting randomly in different directions, consistently pointing his pistol-shaped hands at each of the guards. Every time he fakes a shot, the men fall to the floor as if they were actually hit by the shot. Just a minute later, the mafia boss's entire guard lies unconscious on the floor in front of him. Ling Tian points his gun straight at the boss himself. Coming close, he places his fingers on his forehead and with cold determination orders the man to listen carefully to everything he says. The mafia boss is seized with terrible horror. He perceives the young man as a real demon and, in a trembling voice, asks him to speak. The man promises to do everything he demands. Meanwhile, Ling Tian gives a hidden signal through the open window, giving a thumbs up signifying his approval. On the roof of the neighboring building, there is a manager who, using a rifle and sleeping pills, carefully and silently neutralizes all the guards. Cao Bilo, watching what is happening, is deeply surprised by the accuracy and professionalism of the manager, sincerely admiring her skill and calling her work simply magnificent. In a haughty voice, the manager calmly tells Cao Bilo that working with the sleeping rifle is a mere trifle for her and requires minimal effort. The girls continue their conversation on the roof, completely immersed in the conversation and completely unaware that someone is watching them closely through binoculars. The secret observer turns out to be Xueqing, who wonders with interest what move Ling Tian will make next in this complex game. Standing against the wall are the dejected bosses of the crime gangs previously involved in fraudulent activities on the streaming platform, forced to await their fate. Ling Tian, feeling proud of his work, approaches the police officer, confidently informing him that all the key players in the fraud case are here. The police inspector looks at the situation with a stern look. The girl approves of Ling Tian's actions and notes that this time the young man really did a brilliant job. Cao Bilo, deeply irritated, reminds everyone present that she has repeatedly denied any involvement in the fraudulent schemes. The police inspector, unwilling to give in, counters by arguing that although it does not directly concern her, there are many hidden nuances to the matter. Cao Bilo, unable to contain her emotions, shouts loudly at the inspector and indignantly asks if catching all these criminals is not enough to clear her of suspicion. The police inspector confidently states that the captured leaders of the criminal group are just small fry, behind whom stand much more powerful forces. Ling Tian speculates that these forces have recently been using multiple companies to create black funds and hide illegal transactions. However, the young man's thoughts are suddenly interrupted by the director of the disciplinary bureau, who suddenly enters the room and, with a slight smile, calls Ling Tian a rather smart guy. The director explains that all departments are currently actively working on this case, but unfortunately, they have not yet managed to obtain significant evidence. After surveying the assembled group with his piercing gaze, the director of the disciplinary bureau announces the existence of a secret plan that he intends to implement. The police inspector, after listening carefully to her father's words, seems to understand the essence of his plan, which causes her a strong feeling of anxiety. Ling Tian, noticing the close attention of the inspector and the director, begins to feel nervous. The guy understands that he too may find himself in the center of upcoming events. Ling Tian, feeling uneasy, tries to clarify what is happening and asks the police officers directly why they are staring at him so intently. The police inspector, without delay, explains that the director of the disciplinary bureau is proposing that Ling Tian conduct the investigation as a freelancer. Hearing this, Ling Tian feels very irritated and indignantly asks why no one warned him in advance that they were planning to use him as a secret agent. The police inspector, addressing the director, states that such dangerous tasks cannot be entrusted to others, especially those who are not prepared for such risks. The director, for his part, calmly tells the inspector that he understands her concern for the young man, but reminds her that the safety of the entire country depends on Ling Tian's actions. Ling Tian collects his thoughts and, with a serious expression, tells the director that the mission looks extremely dangerous and requires careful preparation. The director of the disciplinary bureau listens to him carefully and, with a note of understanding in his voice, states that he does not intend to force ordinary people to take such a serious risk. To everyone's surprise, Ling Tian suddenly agrees to carry out secret missions, but adds that he should be offered a much higher fee for such dangerous work. The girls silently watch what is happening. They are clearly shocked by the young man's decision and his attitude towards the upcoming mission. The director of the disciplinary bureau, noticing their surprise, cannot help but smile and begins to laugh loudly, saying that modern young people have become too ambitious. After that, he hands over a folder of classified materials to Ling Tian, which contains information about the criminals, and he urges the young man to prepare thoroughly and then begin carrying out the secret operation. He emphasizes that although the mission will be extremely dangerous, the glory it will bring will be priceless. Ling Tian, with an important look, assures him that he has never failed a single task and is ready to cope with any difficulty. Ling Tian leaves the room. The director, turning to the police inspector, notes with interest that this guy is really very unusual, and if everything goes according to plan, they will definitely continue their cooperation. The girl turns to the director. She calls him Dad, after which she asks him not to talk nonsense. The inspector says that there is no relationship between her and this young man. With the streaming platform scam deal over, Ling Tian is wasting no time in moving on to the next battle, which is set to begin on campus. In one of the folders, Ling Tian finds very important information that concerns a music teacher who teaches at their university. This music teacher is a handsome man with good manners, which makes him very popular with the older female students. However, despite his attractiveness, he is not interested in young female students. He has secret feelings for a teacher named Chen, and the young man watches closely as the music teacher tries to win her favor. Ling Tian puts on black glasses. His face becomes stern. The young man decides to find out more about the music teacher in order to expose him. Chen, in her office, stares out the window for a long time in silence, lost in thought about her father, who is currently in the hospital. Suddenly, her phone rings, and the doctor tells her that her father is gradually recovering, but they have serious problems of a completely different nature. The doctor asks her not to worry, but then anxiously reports that her father has disappeared from the hospital this morning. Chen is emotional about this news and wonders how her father could disappear from the hospital when he is unable to move during his recovery. The doctor, somewhat confused, admits that he has very little information about the incident, but he assumes that perhaps someone took him away. The teacher is very outraged by this incident and, without wasting time, informs the doctor that she is immediately leaving for the hospital. At the hospital, she is met by police officers who draw up a report. The girl approaches the officer and asks if any evidence was found. The policeman explains that it was a group of people in black who broke into the room in the morning and kidnapped her father, after which he asks the girl if her family has any enemies. Chen honestly tells the police officer that she has had some minor conflicts lately, but that is clearly not enough for someone to decide to kidnap her father. At this moment, the teacher receives a message on her phone. The kidnappers inform her that her father is with them and strongly advise her not to contact the police. The officer notices that the teacher is visibly nervous after using the phone and asks with concern if she is okay. The girl, trying to hide her concern, says that it was a message from her student who was having some problems. Chen hopes that the police can quickly find her father and says that she needs to leave immediately. Chen is certain that her father's kidnappers must be enemies of Ling Tian's business. The girl is in great confusion because, on the one hand, she wants to warn Lingtian about the danger that may threaten him, and on the other hand, her father is in the hands of criminals. Suddenly, the teacher jumps up from her desk as a man appears in the room, reaching out his hands to her. Chen, greatly irritated by this behavior, asks the music teacher what he is doing. A smile appears on the music teacher's face. The man considers his joke a success and invites the teacher to go on a date with him. Chen firmly refuses the music teacher and asks him to forget about it, and after a short pause, she says that she already has a boyfriend. The music teacher begins to feel very angry and reproaches the teacher for having thought too long and now daring to refuse him. Chen feels awkward in this situation and shyly asks the music teacher to forgive her. The man, showing great anger, says that he knows about her secret life and that she conducts private broadcasts, which only increases her confusion. Chen doesn't know what to say at this point and starts to wonder why she's even participating in streams. The music teacher, trying to take revenge on the girl for her refusal, tries to humiliate her. He says that she just likes it when men stare at her. He begins to slowly approach Chen, feeling threatened. The girl screams loudly and asks him to stay put. The man holds out his hands to her and, smirking, says that internet celebrities are one hotter than the other. His appearance changes, acquiring a demonic appearance. He tells the girl that from now on, she belongs only to him. Chen starts screaming loudly and demands that the music teacher take his hands off her immediately. At this moment, the men's hands firmly grab her by the shoulders. The girl furiously says that she does not like being touched at all. The music teacher freezes in shock, as he was unable to grab her while being a meter away from the girl. Lingtian appears next to the girl and tells the teacher that he has come to her aid. The young man, with a smile on his face, assures Chen that his touch should not be taken as groping. He explains that such touches are simply a sign of concern for the subordinate on the part of the boss. Chen, clearly shocked by what is happening, realizes that she has just fought off one annoying suitor and is now forced to endure Lingtian's touch. The music teacher asks the young man how he managed to get up here, since they are on the 7th floor. Young people are moved into the cradle of a car lift. Lingtian, clinging to the girl, replies that you can get to the 7th floor by simply buying a crane. The teacher, trying to remain calm, asks the young man not to create problems for her in front of the other teachers. Lingtian understands this statement in his own way and thinks that if they are together, he will be able to do whatever he wants. The music teacher is very angry. He furiously throws an incomprehensible object at the young people, which flies straight towards them at great speed. The young man is very surprised by such an attack and at the last moment manages to dodge the object flying at him, barely avoiding serious injuries. He is very indignant at the actions of the music teacher, since the throw injured his ear. And if the young man had not dodged, he might have been more seriously injured. The music teacher, with an angry expression on his face, orders the young man to leave the place immediately and informs him that Chen is the woman he likes. Lingtian, without losing his composure, informs the music teacher that, first of all, Chen is his woman, and secondly, the energy that his hand emits is exactly the same as his brother's. The music teacher, in a rage, calls the young man a little brat who wants to know his family's secrets. The man can barely control his wild rage, and clenching his fists, he tells Chen that he is giving her one last chance. He warns the teacher that if she decides to leave with the young man, he will not be able to guarantee her father's safety. Chen is very angry. She accuses the music teacher of being the kidnapper of her father. The girl does not hide her emotions and rage. Lingtian gently takes the girl's hands, then in a quiet voice asks her not to be nervous, assuring her that he is nearby and everything will be fine. Chen is very worried about his kidnapped father, because even the police could not find him. The feeling of helplessness grows with each passing second. Lingtian, trying to calm the girl down, asks her not to worry and says that, unlike the police, he has already found her father. A bright flame flares up in the music teacher's hand, and he states in surprise that this cannot be, since his family controls all the high-ranking authorities in this city. Lingtian has strong doubts about his family's influence and confidently says that even ordinary people can be stronger and more worthy than his powerful family. The music teacher scornfully tells the young man that he knows absolutely nothing about it, and, unable to restrain himself, throws the school chalk towards Lingtian. The guy reacts quickly and hugs the girl tightly, thereby saving her from being hit by a flying object. A piece of school chalk flies past and hits the basket containing the young people with force. The impact was so strong that it broke the supporting structure of the basket, and now it is slowly starting to fall apart, which makes the situation dangerous. The teacher screams loudly in fear and clings to the young man. They begin to quickly fall down. Chen continues to scream loudly, realizing that they are about to fall from a great height and probably crash to their deaths. The girl loses all hope of salvation. A moment later, the girl realizes that they have suddenly stopped. She is surprised and stops screaming, looking around, clearly not understanding what is happening. The music teacher is also very surprised by what happened. He looks closely at the young people who are now hanging in the air and not moving. Ling Tian asks the man with a smile if he has ever seen a movie being made, and then explains that wire rope stunts are much cheaper than buying a crane. The young people begin to slowly climb up. Ling Tian waves his hand to the music teacher and in a confident tone says that they will meet him on the roof. The man instantly rushes to the landing, deciding to catch up with the young people on the roof of the building. He goes up to the roof and sees Chen rushing towards his father, who is in a wheelchair and has somehow ended up on the roof of the building. With a smile on his face, Ling Tian says that he was not lying or bluffing when he said that he found the teacher's father. The music teacher is beside himself with rage. His body is shaking violently from nervous tension. He does not understand at all how Chen's father could have ended up on the roof, and is at a loss to guess. The man stands as if paralyzed. Unable to believe what is happening, he looks at the young people and constantly repeats that this simply cannot be. Suddenly, he is distracted from his thoughts by an unexpected touch. Someone places a hand on his shoulder. The music teacher turns around abruptly and sees Ling Tian crying loudly in front of him, making the scene even more bizarre. The man, not understanding what is happening, asks the young man why he is whining, surprised by his emotions at such a moment. Ling Tian wipes the tears from his face, sobs slightly, and says that the scene of the father and daughter reunion is very touching. The music teacher abruptly pulls the young man's hand away and loudly calls him names, demanding that he immediately stop bullying him. The man is unable to contain his rage. After that, he asks Ling Tian how he was able to free her father, clearly not understanding what happened. The young man, with a slight grin, says that all he has is money. A look of great surprise appears on the music teacher's face, as he believes that the boy has bribed his people. The music teacher picks up the phone, gritting his teeth in anger. He begins to dial a phone number, clearly preparing for an important conversation that could change the course of events. The phone rings, the man takes out his phone and sees that it is his boss calling him. The man politely calls the music teacher his boss and asks what his next instructions will be. At this moment, a wild, loud scream is heard on the phone. The man immediately removes it from his ear. Not understanding why his boss is screaming so angrily, he is confused and stunned by the unexpected behavior. The music teacher, not hiding his anger, asks the kidnappers how much they were bought for. He is trying to understand who is behind all this. The man, trying to remain calm, replies that this is not true, and they have never worked for competitors. He tries to convince him of his innocence and understand what is happening. The music teacher, with obvious disbelief, asks why in that case the kidnappers release the hostage. The man turns and looks closely at the kidnapped person. He does not understand what is happening and tells the music teacher that he is misleading him. The man claims that he is now next to the hostage. The teacher says that he doesn't believe a single word the man says, and he says again that he's not lying and asks the teacher to come to the place and see for himself. The music teacher, with fury in his voice, calls his subordinate a liar and an idiot, promising to tear him into small pieces. A satisfied smile appears on Ling Tian's face. He enjoys how the music teacher loses control, becomes hysterical, and literally seethes with rage. Suddenly, the man calms down, trying to collect his thoughts. He has a clear feeling that the whole situation may be a carefully thought-out trap. The music teacher turns around abruptly and sees that the chair the paralyzed man had been in is now empty, which surprises and alarms him. Suddenly, the man in the chair jumps high into the air, heading quickly towards the music teacher. With incredible speed, he flies up to the teacher, snatches the phone from his hands and, doing a somersault, lands smoothly on the roof. Filled with anger and hatred, the music teacher cannot understand what these young people are up to and feels his rage growing. Ling Tian calmly says that the answer is quite simple. He is going to get even with the scoundrel. The boy continues talking, saying that the teacher acted very meanly, and then rips the fabric off the device, which is designed to recognize the exact location. Ling Tian takes out the music teacher's phone and quickly connects it to the location recognition device using a cable. The computer processes the information very quickly and displays data on the location of the subscriber who called earlier. Ling Tian tells his friends that this place is very close to the city center and suggests that they set off immediately. Meanwhile, Chen's father begins to tear off pieces of artificial skin from his face. Under this mask, the manager was hiding. The girl tells the young men that they should hurry, after which she pushes off from the ledge and jumps down. Following the manager, Lingtian jumps from the roof, quickly spreading the wings of his flying suit and softly descending down to the ground. Lingtian assures the girl that everything is now under control, after which he asks how he can best punish the music teacher. Chen moves closer to the young man and whispers the punishment plan to him, which makes Lingtian look visibly shocked. The guy asks Chen if she thinks the proposed method is too cruel to punish their opponent. A moment later, Lingtian changes his mind and agrees with the girl, adding that he is starting to like the idea. The senior girls gather outside the music teacher's office, waiting for him to appear and discussing their plans. In the semi-dark corridor, the girls notice a familiar silhouette, instantly recognizing it as their favorite music teacher. They admire the man's figure and declare that such elegance can only be found in their idol. Charmed by their teacher, the girls wave their hands in a friendly manner as a sign of greeting, experiencing sincere warm feelings. However, a second later their mood changes dramatically. The corridor is enveloped in complete silence. They look closely at the person approaching them. The music teacher, addressing the girls, says that despite their sympathy, he has serious matters to attend to and he needs to concentrate on his work. The girls, however, respond with disbelief, look at each other and ask who he is. They simultaneously whisper among themselves and call the man some kind of freak. The man is clearly puzzled by what is happening. He sincerely does not understand the strange reaction and, with bewilderment, tells the girls that he is their favorite music teacher. The man insistently repeats to the girls that he is their favorite music teacher, completely unaware that his appearance has changed greatly. Part of his hair is missing, and his face looks old and sickly. He suddenly begins to scream loudly, sending angry curses towards Lingtian, realizing that the young man has somehow disfigured his appearance. Meanwhile, the girls from Team Lingtian are outside near the mobile kitchen, chatting enthusiastically among themselves, discussing the latest events.